This is the D6 generation with your hosts, Craig Gallant.
You're wrong! If you're getting any compensation, it's not charity!
Russ Wakeland. You put me on a boat with frickin' dragons attacking me and whatnot? Now we're talking. And Eric Summerer in the third chair.
I'll say things for money.
With contributions from Total Fangirl.
Vampires do not sparkle.
And our loyal listeners.
Are you crazy? That's like 400 hours of gamer nonsense.
Welcome to another edition of Rapid Fire, the roundtable discussion of all things gaming, coming at the speed of a Venezuelan jet black guinea pig being chased by a giant one-eyed cat. Today's edition is brought to you by High Heavens. Ever wonder who would win in a battle between Zeus and Thor, Ares and Loki? Go to Kickstarter to check out the game High Heavens and find out. I'm Geekly McNerdigan, your host. Today, as always, our panelists are Russ, rasping-toned Wakeland, and as a special guest today from the Dice Tower and countless audiobooks, training videos, and more, the dulcet tones of Eric, sweet-sounding Summerer. Let's begin. Issue number 1. A rite of passage is a ritual event that marks a person's transition from one station to another. Milestones include a first date, first driver's license, graduating from high school, or even marriage. Rites of passage are often times of great pride and accomplishment for both the person being conducted through the ritual and their parents, friends, and family. Question. As gamers shepherd their younglings into the world of gamerdom, choosing the right games to usher them into the next realm is incredibly important. Of the following 4 games, which is considered by reasoned experts, is the best for introducing a young person to board gaming? A. Bingo. B. Jingo. C. Zingo. Or D. Flingo. Uncle Wiggly Wakeland.
None of the above. I'm going to go with Dungeons and Dragons.
Get to add an E. Shoots and Ladders Summerer.
Zingo.
And that is... How did you do that? Seriously, how did you get that right?
Yes. Search.
So you are correct. Which,
Wow.
Still, luckily, allows for one wrong. Russ.
Darn it.
Zingo. Bingo with a zing. It kind of takes the zip out of my delivery. Anyway, issue number 2. For 54 years, the National Academy of Recording Arts and Sciences of the United States has bestowed the Grammy for Best Spoken Word Album to the artist with the sweetest, most melodious delivery and diction. The winners of this august award include actors such as Michael J. Fox and Betty White, and presidents such as JFK and FDR. Question. Name the 3 U.S. presidents who won the Grammy for Best Spoken Word Album for their professionally recorded narration of their own written works. Ruby D. Russ.
Well, really? 3? I got nothing.
Alan Arkin Eric.
Oh, that's going to be Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, and I believe George W. Bush.
And I'm lucky that I get to say wrong.
Oh.
By 1/3. Southern accents are really where it is. Unfortunately, you substituted one Southern accent for another. The third would be Jimmy Carter.
Oh.
Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, and imagine my fear as he was trying to think of the third one, but Jimmy Carter, which unfortunately you get no credit. Issue number 3. Although anthropomorphic mice are currently all the rage in gaming circles, we must not forget the long and distinguished lineage of these man-like mouselings. From the wind in the willows to those fantastic rats of Nim, these little rodents have been gnawing their way into our hearts for well over 100 years. Question. In 1971, Robert C. O'Brien made the childhoods of countless wee ones around the world more magical with his fantastical tale of Mrs. Frisbee and the large rodents that lived nearby. Of course, we're talking about the rats of Nim, founding their own society in the Rosebush on Mr. Fitzgibbon's farm. What does the acronym NIMH stand for? Rasco Rat Russ.
Oh, I'm really embarrassed. I forgot. I used to know this.
Mr. Ages Eric.
Nocturnal immigrants of mice.
Finally, a completely wrong one. That's completely justified in saying wrong. NIMH, National Institute of Mental Health. And people say animal testing is bad. Issue number 4. A mystic is defined as a person or mouse who pursues communion with, identity with, or conscious awareness of an ultimate reality, divinity, spiritual truth, or God through direct experience, intuition, insight, or instinct. Modern use of the term mystic has added an element of spiritualism focused on a heightened sense of well-being or euphoria through such communion or awareness. Question: what is the term for a word used improperly in place of another word with similar meaning or sound? Roderigo Russ.
Oops.
Prince Aeschylus Eric.
Homonym?
Thong! That is, of course, a malapropism. I would have also accepted a Dogberryism from the Shakespearean character Dogberry in Much Ado About Nothing. Seriously, guys, you are getting jalopy. That's it for now. Thanks for listening, and good night.
This episode of the D6 Generation is brought to you by Lone Wolf Development. Take your game to the next level.
And by Geek Nation Tours. Rise up and join the Geek Nation, touring the world at geeknationtours.com.
And by Conquistador Games, focusing on immersive and thematic games. More details at cqgames.com.
And the War Store, bringing the war to your door since 1999, and that is for a decade or more.
And by Winged Hussar Publishing, providing books for students of history and history students. wingedhussarpublishing.com. And by Game Salute, publishing awesome tabletop games through the Powered by Game Salute program, supporting independent publishers, stores, and the industry at gamesalute.com. Hello!
Hello!
Oh!
Hey, and welcome to episode 124 of the D6 Generation. I'm Russ Wakelin.
I'm Craig Gallant.
And I'm Eric Summerer.
Hey, Eric, welcome to the show. So excited to have you.
I'm excited to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
We're thrilled to have Eric here. Eric, of course, is very well known as the co-host of the Dice Tower for many a year now. Eric, how long has it been over there?
Wow, I think I've been co-hosting since August of 2009. So yeah, it's been a while.
That is awesome. That's a hefty tenure there, sir.
It is. I've been on it longer than I haven't.
Yeah, that's.
He's lending a false sense of credibility to our podcast by helping us in the third chair.
Right, with that very professional voice. And Eric, of course, also does a lot of professional. In fact, that's your career now, to be a professional voice. Is that not correct?
I will say things for money.
Yeah, exactly right. And so today's show, first here, after we do our achievements, we're going to talk to Eric about what it's like to be a professional voice. You know, what that
we're going
to
grill him with all the questions we've ever wanted to know that popped up in our heads while listening to audiobooks.
Yeah, and that's right. And Eric does work for Audible and everything, so we're really excited to talk about that. And, of course, later in the show, we're going to visit a great hotness. It's been a little while now, Mice and Mystics, great family dungeon crawling game that we're going to talk about a little bit. Yes, with mice and stuff.
Nice.
So also,
mice don't really allow for lots of cool audio effects.
Not really. Now, I have to apologize up front. I'm fighting some allergies. My throat's a little scratchy. And so, Eric, I wanted to ask you, as a professional voice guy, you must battle this all the time. What does a professional voice person do when they're fighting a cold to keep that sort of, just so I know for the future how to battle this sort of thing?
Hot liquid. I'll often do sort of a mixture of water, lemon juice, and honey.
Ooh.
In fact, that's what I've been chugging pretty constantly while doing the books lately. I try and stay away from coffee. That sort of dehydrates just a little bit.
Okay.
I have 1 cup in the morning to wake me up. But after that, I stay away from the dairy. I try and keep things pretty clear, citrusy, and that sort of keeps things clear. I also make sure that my allergy medication is up to date so that I don't get the crazy backups that you might get if they get out of control.
Oh, good tip. Okay, I'm going to try that. I think I may drink too much coffee. That could be a problem. I may have to watch that.
Eric, how much is your voice insured for?
I haven't looked into that. I do hear that that's an important thing. But in all seriousness, if I do get sick, and I have, I can't work. I've had times that I get a cold. In fact, when I was in the middle of the Dungeons & Dragons books, I got a cold that really affected my voice. And for about a week, I couldn't work because every time I tried to get in the studio, it wouldn't match what I had recorded previously. I was in the middle of the book, and I had to wait until I got back into full voice before I could really get back into it.
Oh, that's tough. And, for those who don't know what it's like to be self-employed, when you're self-employed, you don't get like a sick day. No one pays you to take a day off.
No.
Tough stuff. Jury duty also sucks when you're self-employed, just saying. All right, so...
you mean you can't pay yourself?
No. You're sitting there, and all the other jurors are like, hey, free day to sit. I'm like, no. This is back when I was a consultant. I was like, oh.
Sorts of stuff, yes.
Yeah. So anyway, Now, normally this is the part we talk about our contests. We don't have any contests upcoming because of this big event going on at Adepticon. What's going on with that, Craig?
Well, at Adepticon, of course, one of, if not the biggest sci-fi, historical, and fantasy war game, miniature war games conventions in America, way over in Chicago way, in the Windy City. Everybody's playing miniatures games fast and furiously all weekend long. And years ago, what they did, they reached out to us and they asked if we would like to start a board game night to let everybody kind of unwind and relax after a long weekend of kicking the crap out of each other with miniature games. And so with some help from our friends throughout the industry, we have a huge library that we've established now and just a giant pile of games to give away every year. And it starts right around 8 o'clock at night. We're hoping to start a little earlier this year in one of the back ballrooms of the hotel at Adepticon. And for the first time, I will be there as the lone D6G guy.
Oh, I know. I'm so sad.
Yeah, no, Russ is not going to be with me, and Rafe is not going to be with me, and I'm flying solo. Except for Matt from the Nerd Herders podcast. Matt is going to be there, and he's going to help me out. And we're going to just be playing games and giving games away all night long till they kick us out. Literally, when the janitors flick the lights at 2 or 3 in the morning, and they force us to leave.
Nice.
And that's going to be made possible by Weird Miniatures and Conquistador.
Games, yep.
Stronghold Games, Game Salute. Plaid Hat is in on the trick now, and of course our friend Kurt over at Smirk and Dagger Games. So seriously, the prize pile just keeps getting bigger and bigger every year, and everybody comes in at the beginning of it every year just stunned by the giant pile. It's like Christmas for grown-ups.
It is.
In April in Chicago.
Right.
And so really looking forward to that. And it's an awesome way to end an amazing miniature game weekend.
It is. Nice, relaxing board game. Good times. Good times. So make sure. And if you're just hanging out in the Chicago area, drop by and check out the board game night on Sunday. That'd be great.
Absolutely. And if you're going to Adepticon, please take the chance and stay that extra night so you're there on Sunday. It's on Sunday night, and I understand most of you go home. I used to go home Sunday during the day also, but it's well worth the wait if you win something. If not, it might not, but, whatever.
So also, we do this little thing called Lost Chapters where we record ourselves talking to each other in Dunkin' Donuts for some inexplicable reason. And Eric was kind enough to join us in Dunkin' Donuts. Eric, do you remember what we discussed last time we met there?
Well, I think we were talking about playing games with kids. I was just trying to drink my coffee, but you guys sat down next to me and started talking.
Yeah, he was sitting there like minding his own business. Like, is that Eric? That's Eric. Quick, Craig, grab the mic. We're going to go in. And we just chatted
about. You need to get that golden voice.
Exactly. You got to capture it.
It's kind of like birding.
It's just like birding. So we talked about gaming with your kids and great games to introduce your kids, especially younger kids to. So if you're a parent or a soon-to-be parent, or maybe you got nieces and nephews or something, and you're wondering about the great games to show your kids, one great one this episode, Mice and Mystics, but if you're looking for others, head on over to the Lost Chapters. And Craig, how do folks get involved with the Lost Chapters?
Well, if you want to get involved with a Lost Chapter, you got to start hanging out at the wrong bars.
Oh dear.
And just wear some shameful clothing, and eventually a Lost Chapter will get involved with you.
Or you can go to our webpage and
you can go to our website at the d6generation.com, and you'll find a really cool little logo that will be in the right-hand corner, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Right margin. You click on that. It'll bring you right to all the different Lost Chapters that we have.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, we have free apps, iOS and Android, and those will help you manage all of your D6 generation content.
Right. Exactly. And don't forget,
showing you all of the tantalizing titles of our Lost Chapter array.
That's right. So head on over to our website, check that out. Check out the game list and see all the action over there at the d6generation.com.
Game list is important. Check out the game list.
Mm-hmm. Craig, we updated it recently with our last 2 games on there. Did you update your comments on those yet?
I did not.
No. Okay. Just calling you out there on the air.
Remember how.
No pressure.
You're gonna have to show me again how.
Okay. What's the time now for, Craig?
Now would be probably roughly time for Achievements in Gaming.
It is indeed. And, we have these cool shout-outs. Eric, are you looking at the shout-out here in our document there, the Achievements in Gaming section?
Yes.
Can you, because you're a professional, I don't know if it's in your contract with the Dice Tower not to read shout-outs in other shows.
But I don't know if I have. Maybe we can make an exception right here.
Okay, if you could, I just would love to hear you read it. I have a professional read a shout-out on the show is just a long-time goal of mine. So if you...
Cool.
Help fund High Heavens, the board and card game that pits Greek and Norse gods against each other in tactical battle, on Kickstarter now.
Wow, look, the timing. The timing's amazing there.
See, I never would have thought about that pause before now.
I know it. It just sells the whole thing. Just boom, right there.
That's what you get.
Easy, one of the two.
Achievement for that reading, Eric. That was fantastic.
Absolutely.
So first in achievements here, for new listeners, we talk about the games we played recently, and this little noise you're going to hear is not an accident. That is actually the achievement tone for doing something geekily of value. So
value.
Yes.
Of questionable value.
Right. So Eric, what have you been playing lately?
Well, I broke out the Lord of the Rings dice building game.
Ooh, what'd you think of that?
It's kind of weird. This is based on the Quarriors system. It's actually designed by the designers of Quarriors. This is two newer designers that took the Quarriors system with the dice building, and you've got your bag full of dice, and you're collecting the dice, buying the dice, and adding them to your pool, and it turns it into a quest-based game that is based around the Lord of the Rings. You've got these location cards, and you're moving around through these locations, progressing your way, hopefully dropping off the ring in Mount Doom. And instead of attacking the other players, you are attacking the forces of Sauron. Oh, and there's a whole mechanism for how his dice come into play, and they get re-rolled, and you can knock them out in one location, but they all come back when you move into another location. And you have to wipe out his forces in order to move forward, to progress through the game. And it's a semi-cooperative game. So you are working together to progress and knock out his forces, but you are also scoring points. And this is where it's kind of a weird disconnect for me, because in order to make the game really make sense and make some of the choices worthwhile, you need to play it where points matter. You need to be a little cutthroat and a little willing to hose the group in order to score more points, because there's this mechanism where Sauron earns corruption points for the characters that he has still in the game. And you can decide, if you are the ring bearer, and this passes around throughout the game, if you're the ring bearer, you can decide to take some of those corruption points as negative score points for you. You take the hit. And whatever gets left over, they get assigned to one of the cards in the wilds, corrupting it, making it as if it was a blank die. And so if you don't want a really awesome die to get corrupted, or one that you have purchased a bunch of, then you may need to give up some points in order to prevent that die from being corrupted. But if you don't care about points, and you just want to play it fully cooperatively, well, you can give up a whole bunch of points and make it, easier than it's supposed to be. So if I'm not really a semi-cooperative fan, I like to have straight co-ops. And so it's kind of a weird feel for me. Also, the rule book, as it is in the box, is terrible. There is a new one that is out. WizKids has put out a revised rule book that is far better. I need to play it while reading the new rule book to really get a feel for how it really should be played.
Well, that's a shame, because the Quarriors was so solid. I'm surprised they kind of dropped the ball on this one a little bit, it sounds like.
Weird. And the rule book that's in the box looks like it was printed on somebody's laser printer. It just doesn't have the professional feel that you would expect that you got from Quarriors. It's almost like they ran out of time. They had to meet a deadline or something, and they rushed it through.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. They jumped the gun before they were really ready.
Yeah.
That's a shame.
That's too bad.
Another interesting game that I've had fun with is a self-produced game called Space Dice. This falls under the same category as Zombie Dice, if you've played that. Martian Dice. It's a tube, and it has a bunch of dice in it. But what makes this different from, say, Zombie Dice is that instead of custom-printed D6s, they're custom-printed D12s.
Ooh.
And not only are you trying to roll certain symbols in order to score points, but there's also a positional element. That you're trying to get planets. And you can't actually score a planet unless there's a sun that you also roll, making the planet habitable. Makes sense?
Makes sense. Right.
But there's also space debris. They sort of look like asteroids flying through space. And that's the directional element. So you roll the die, you get 4 dice, and you roll those dice, and then you look and see if any of that space debris is pointed toward your planet. If it's pointed toward the planet's destroyed, and you can't score.
Oh, nice impact. That's cool.
But if you also have this space debris pointing away from your planets, and if there isn't a star or there isn't a black hole that you roll, because that's another symbol you can roll, you can attack your opponents and take away their scored planets.
Oh, fun.
However, if you roll 3 black holes, you're done for the round. There's also this supernova that resets the entire game and just puts everybody's score to 0. There's 3 levels of dice: red dice, yellow dice, and green dice, and one is more chaotic than the others. I actually like it quite a bit. Tracking this one down might be difficult. It doesn't actually show up on Board Game Geek. The game is space dice. And if I'm able to track down a website link, I'll pass it on to you guys.
Well, that sounds neat. I don't think I've ever heard of a board game that's not on Board Game Geek.
There is another game called Space Dice, and it's definitely not this game that I just played. It's a self-published game, but I think, depending on price, I haven't seen the MSRP for it.
Okay. It sounds fun, but is it too random with the whole everything gets reset and it's like you haven't played yet?
Well, that symbol only shows up on the red dice.
Okay.
I think if you know that that's a possibility, you're not going to want to roll the red dice very often. So if you're in the lead, I don't want to roll the red dice because I could reset everything. But if you're not in the lead, maybe you want to reset and bring the leader back down to your level.
Oh, that's cool. Sounds neat.
And then last but not least, of course, I can't come on another show and not talk about Merchant of Venus. I actually had an opportunity to play with Eric Herman. If you know him, he's a contributor to the Dice Tower. Children's musician. He did the Tom Vassell Top 100 theme song.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Very nice guy. He was traveling from gig to gig and stopped by, and we played Merchant. This is the first time I played the new Standard Edition 2-player, this Fantasy Flight version.
Oh, yeah.
And this... It moved along at a good clip. I have criticized the play time of the new standard version quite a bit. I think with a 4-player game, you're looking at least 4 hours if these are new players. This moved along at about 2.5.
Well, that's not bad.
That's a lot. That's much more manageable, and I was much more willing. We played to the full 30 turns, and I liked it quite a bit. So I think if you're leaning toward the standard version, 2 players, maybe 3, but 4, I'm not so sure.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, now that you've had it for quite some time and played a lot, do you prefer the original version or the standard Fantasy Flight version?
I prefer the classic, the original classic version.
Right.
It's more streamlined, it's simpler, it's the game I fell in love with.
Yeah.
I like the standard version. It has a lot to enjoy, but there's more variation, more randomness than I think I prefer. Mm-hmm. I like the market system of the classic. I like the simplicity of the hazards. A lot of the extra chrome, while interesting, sort of takes away from the elegance of the design. And so I prefer the classic.
Gotcha.
Yeah, definitely looks pretty. Definitely a pretty looking game for sure.
I mean, you can't go wrong. The Fantasy Flight box has both versions in it.
Right.
So
it's a win.
It doesn't matter which one you like better. It's still it's out there now, and that's great. Now, if they hadn't put the classic in this box, I might be very upset right now.
Oh dear. So have you written a thank you letter to Stephen Bonacore because he claims that's his idea?
We should, yes.
Also, how long of a time period have you let lapse between plays now that you have a new version of the game? Can you go a week or more without playing Merchant of Venus? Do you have to kind of?
I can't. I hate to say it, but I'm a little burned out on it.
Really?
I had a couple of conventions all in a row. Yeah. I did TotalCon followed by ConCon, and at both events I was running Merchant of Venus, both standard and classic, and in multiple cases I was running multiple tables.
Oh, jeez.
And I didn't always get to play when I did this because there were so many people that wanted to play. I'd have 2 tables running and all 8 seats were full. Wow. And I was just running back and forth maintaining the game. And I love the game, but there's a point at which you kind of want to play something else.
Right, too much of anything, right?
So in fact, I just said yes to Dice Tower Con. I'm going to run it there as well. So,
well, I got to think now that you're so vehement about your support for the game. I think everybody that runs into you's like, I got to play the game with you, Eric. It must be very, very challenging. Craig, what have you been playing since last we spoke?
let's see. We reviewed Dungeon Command in our last show, and unlike usual, when we have to rush off to the next game, I refused and I played more Dungeon Command. So we had a lot of fun with that last week, and I played 2 more games. I played one with I went and picked up the Drow, because you never can, only have one faction.
Plus, they're Drow. They're awesome. Let's go. I mean,
they're awesome, and the models are awesome too.
Yeah.
So we played one 3-player game and one 4-player game, our first 4-player game. And it was a lot of fun. I still enjoy it. I stand by everything I said. I had a lot of fun. And then everybody else went home. And Will and Will he picked up probably at least as much X-Wing stuff as the rest of us did. But like in true Will fashion, he has never played the game. So I busted out all my stuff from my trunk, which I'd been carrying around with me in the hopes that I could get a game, and we played X-Wing and had a blast. And he loves it again, all over again. And we got to use his new acrylic movement templates that they made, which was awesome, and that was fun. And then this week we played Kemet.
yes.
Cool. Russ, I'll let Russ talk about that because that was his big acquisition.
Yeah.
We played Mice and Mystics, and we did finally get to sit down, and I got to play the as yet heretofore unnamed Angelo pirate game that he calls Arg the Pirate Game.
Right.
Which was, not only was that a lot of fun, but it was awesome because then we brainstormed game design and game development after that for about a half hour, and just had an awesome, very energized conversation about different ways the game could be kicked up or things that we really liked about the game. So it was a blast.
Yeah, nice.
So that was that. That's been my recent gaming. Russ, how about yourself?
Well, as you mentioned, Craig, I did pick up Kemet. Now, Eric, I don't know if this happens to you much because I know you guys at the Dice Tower get tons of sample games just thrown at you, but I still actually go into gaming stores and shop for games occasionally. And normally I try to be good. I try to go and I look, and I hear of a new game coming and I research it. But every once in a while I see a game, and just from the back of the box and the components, with really no knowledge of how it plays, I am sucked into buying the game based on components alone. Has that ever happened to you, Eric?
Yeah. Although I think we talked about this on the Dice Tower recently as well. I end up getting sucked in more by mechanisms and buzz than I do by the components themselves.
Because I thought you mentioned once that the Powerpuff Girls game sucked you in with the awesome tower.
Well, there is that. This was the Mojo Jojo Attacks Townsville game.
Yes,
which is these nice, Powerpuff plastic figures and this giant tower that you throw dice through.
Right.
But I knew nothing about.
See?
Actually, what it was just that I was buying, at that point, I was buying anything that had the Powerpuff Girls on it.
Right. Okay. Great. And that's exactly it. Because I realized as I was looking at this beautiful box, and on the back it's beautiful. And I had just we had just reviewed a couple episodes ago, Clash of Cultures, and I had expressed how disappointed I was in Clash of Cultures because there's this awesome war elephant on the front of the box, and nowhere in the game, neither thematically nor in bits or even encounters, are war elephants. Do they ever appear at all?
Oh, wow.
And I like war elephants. Now, I love Clash of Cultures. Great game, but no
None
elephants.
of us knew he had this big elephant.
Well, if you're going to put a giant war elephant on the front... See, I think it comes from... Back in 8th grade, I did a book report on Hannibal crossing the Alps with his elephants.
All about the elephants.
Yes. So it's all about the elephants. Anyway, so I'm looking
but 2 of those died, but still.
Right. So I'm looking at this game, Kemet, and on the back... Not only is it a cool Egyptian thing with giant D4s that you put down on the board that represent actually, your pyramids, then you put the number up on the D4 to represent the level of power of your pyramid. So there's this whole idea of, because who hasn't looked at a D4 and went, ooh, pyramid, right? They're actually pyramids in this game.
Somebody someday was going to make a game where a D4 was a pyramid.
They have. And what's also cool is all these little plastic bits, which I'm totally a sucker for, and then fantastic artwork, but then also there are these really, really cool pieces that are all these magical creatures that can join your army. And they are beautiful sculpts. They're all beautifully brown inked. And there amongst them was a war elephant with a howdah.
Yeah.
And so I just had to buy this game. So
all about the howdah.
I bought the game. And this is the evening Angelo came up, and I'm thinking I'm not going to get it played tonight because it looks like a pretty complicated game and lots of stuff. So I'm looking through the rules, and Angelo walks in, and he and I are there by ourselves, and he's always game to try something new. So I said, well, let's just try this out. And we had the rules figured out pretty quickly, and we played through a 2-player game in about an hour, and we were thinking, this not only does it look beautiful on the table, but this is a lot of fun. To the point where more people came in later, and we played a full 5-player game, everybody learning. And again, we were done in about, what, an hour, 15 minutes, Craig?
Yeah, about
if that. Blasted right through it, had a great time, and everybody, the rest of the evening, everybody kept talking about it more. I want to try this strategy. I want to try that. And it's very much an area control game. And because you're so limited in your forces, it very much feels a little bit like Small World in that you're going to be able to control an area for a limited period of time, and then you're going to lose that area where you're going to try to maximize your victory point acquisition while you hold it. Because in a minute or two, someone else is going to come in and take it from you. But if you can hold it just long enough to maximize what you get and then come back later, you may be able to do it again. It just looks great. It's got the buying mechanics. It's very much a Euro with the very Ameritrash sort of combat in it. And it's my kind of game. Plus, you add the components on there, and whoo, I like it a lot.
Good stuff.
Yeah. So, Eric, have you had a chance to play it yet? Have you just seen it or heard about it? Or?
I've seen the components. I got to get a nice close look at it at the Gamma Trade Show a few weeks ago, and it is gorgeous. Those huge D4s and gorgeous sculpts on all of those pieces. Really nice. I have not played it, though.
Oh, it's pretty interesting. So, yeah, we'll talk about that more in the future, I'm sure. I'm sure it'll be a review at some point on the show because it's really neat. Then, as Craig mentioned, I played 4-player Dungeon Command with them and had a great time. I am really surprised by how well the game scales and all works at higher player counts. Again, everything we mentioned last episode, really pleased with it still.
Love the way the map just evolves over number of players.
Great little game. Then played Mice and Mystics. I played So some people ask us on the show once in a while, and I don't know if you're a big solo gamer, Eric. I don't play a lot of games solo. Do you play solo games once in a while? Or?
On occasion, more to just figure out the mechanisms than I am to really play solo. I often don't have the time to set it all up and do that if I'm not socializing and playing.
Yeah, I'm the same way, and I very rarely play social. But Craig and I are playing to review Mice and Mystics, and I played Mice and Mystics tons with my kids, but it had been a little while, and so I set it up on the weekend, and I was going to play with them, and they got distracted, and I was just by myself. I said, I'll play a couple rounds to learn the rules, so when I play with Craig on Tuesday, I'll be fresh. And I'm starting to play it, and before I know it, I'm getting into it. Like, oh no, I'm losing a mouse, and I got all upset. And so it really works well if you're a solo gamer. I think this could be one of those fun ones. And it scales well. Great time. We'll talk more about that later this episode.
Yes.
And then I played Descent 2. Now, I've been playing my Descent 2 campaign now. We are very near the end. We are about a half. We had to stop in the middle of a quest this time. We are 1.5 quests away from the finale. And then it's the big finale and it's over. And so far, I have yet to win a quest as Overlord. So I'm still trying to pull one out. But I'm now telling myself that really, if you ever watch people on The Amazing Race, that show, they'll say that you only have to win one leg, and it's the last leg.
Yes.
So I'm that way in Descent 2. My plan now is I'm only going to win one quest, and it'll be the final quest when I kill them all. So that I am lulling them into a false sense of security. This is my plan now. So we'll see if this works. But I'm really still enjoying it very much, even though I am the worst Overlord in terms of...
Constantly.
Yes, I'm losing constantly. So that's what I've been playing lately. And Angelo visited us. Where did Angelo visit us there, Craig?
Well, Angelo came right to Myriad Games in Manchester, New Hampshire. Yes. Not to be confused with Myriad Salem or Myriad Long Island.
Yes, exactly right. So you want to check out a great gaming store, head on over to Myriad Games. Always a great time and a great selection.
Three of their multiple friendly family locations.
Now, this next section, Eric, we talk about modeling. I think you're more of a board gamer than a miniature gamer. Have you done any modeling or anything like that?
Very little experience on this front. The most I have done is painting some minis for Fearsome Floors. I replaced are you familiar with that Freedom and Freeze game?
I am not, no.
You're running from a monster, and the game comes with these nice little cardboard pieces that you can assemble your own monster. There's different arms and legs and feet and heads, and you can make some really grotesque creations. But I thought it was cooler to grab a mini. I got a mummy, and I got some weird clay green man, and I painted those and gave those to my wife for Christmas. But that's the extent of my painting.
That's a good one, though. That's awesome. How about you, Craig? What have you been working on?
I just was touching up the Dungeon Command. I finished up the Heart of Cormyr box, and then I repainted the entire Drow box.
Nice.
And the key was for me though to paint the bases, because even though they come pre-painted, the bases are still that glossy plastic, and so painting them, I found an olive drab color, and then sort of dabbing and dry brush combo, a darkish gray and then a lightish gray actually brought out, so there was greens and grays in the base, which makes it blend into the cavern side or the exterior outdoor side of the game tiles, which I thought really made my little force pop. So
it
I had
works
a
really well. Very, very clever. I like that. That was a good move.
Now, are you changing the color scheme of these guys, or are you sticking pretty much with the pre-paintedness of what's in there?
Well, I changed the color scheme. For some reason I thought that the Heart of Cormyr guys were all blue in the artwork, and they were like just a funky purple in the box. Later on, I looked more closely, and all of their card art is also the same funky purple. So I guess thematically, purple was the way to go. But I don't really like purple that much on my heroes, so I changed the color scheme completely on all of them and made there aren't uniforms or anything, but they've all got different elements of clothing and stuff. And so I painted all of their clothing in different aspects of blue, different shades of blue, so that when you put them all together, they look sort of like a unified force. And then I like purple with my dark elves, but again, I don't like the funky purple and red that they used out of the box. So I changed the shades, and then I added... The thing about D&D Minis Drow is that all black is just... I believe they prime the models black, or the models are black plastic out of the machine, and everything that would be black on the model is just left blank. So the face has absolutely no detail to it, and any black clothing has no detail to it. And with Drow, where almost everything they wear is black, it looks like half the model just isn't painted. So I did a little bit of flesh stuff and a little bit of dry brushing, and I changed their armor. Instead of leaving it black, I painted it with metal, and then I inked it. And so I did a lot with each model, but still only spent like maybe 2 or 3 hours total on the whole box. But really, really liked the results.
Cool.
So it was fun. What about you, Ross?
Well, I got a little more daddy-daughter modeling time, and I got... So my daughter managed to build her megalith, which is the one of the larger constructs for her Circle of Orboros Hordes force. And we got that all built and primed. She hasn't painted yet. We primed it. And then also, we have another session of our Iron Kingdoms RPG coming up. And Craig, I found some models I think might work for some of our heroes. So I picked some of those up with the rationalization that I'll also use them in War Machine, you see. So I got those. And then finally, this is sort of an interesting modeling entry. Dan over at Game Salute has a copy of this game called Admiral. And Admiral is a game that was been published in Russia. And basically the premise of this game is it's Navy combat. So you got this board and it's covered with a grid. And there is, you're going to command lots of little boats, about 12 per side. And there's 4 different classes. You got your frigates and your galleys and your ships of the line and that kind of thing. And to represent your boats, there's all these little plastic models that come on sprues. You got to clip them out and assemble them. And these things are pretty hardcore assembly because each boat, for example, each little frigate, which is about a 1/4 inch, maybe a 1/2 inch high, each frigate, imagine a little brown frigate, brown plastic. You clip that out. It's got 2 pegs in the bottom. You clip out this little green base and you stick it in its base. And the base sort of matches the board, but not really. I wish it was quarter. You stick it in the base. Base keeps it standing up. Then it's got all its little masts on there, and it stays and everything. And there's little holes. And then there are like the sail patterns for each ship match what there are in real life. And so if it's got 5 sails in the ship, there's like 5 white things to clip out of plastic to snap in and put your rigging on. So you can spend. It took me 30 minutes to build 3 boats. Wow. And there are 24 in the box. So a little bit of work, but it looks. I mean, they actually. I posted some pictures on Facebook, and a lot of people like those. Kind of look like they're made out of, like they're gummy candy or something. They do look like little candy boats. But it's kind of fun because it reminds me of the components you used to get in games like back in the 80s, but it's cute. And the mechanics are kind of neat. There's this very old classic board game that I used to play as a kid called Yacht Race. And what I liked about Yacht Race was that when you moved your boats, there was no luck because basically there was a wind indicator and you just moved your boat a certain number of squares per turn based on the angle from the wind you were moving. And the luck came in where you get these cards that allowed you to change the wind. You try to control which way the wind was going so that when you turned around the buoy and started heading towards the next buoy, so imagine like an America's Cup style race, you now put the wind into your favorable position because the other guys are still coming the other way and you try to block them out. Well, this game is interesting because it's a combat game with that same sort of mechanic where you move across the grid at the rate based on your angle to the wind, which is sort of neat because a lot of these Navy games lately have they kind of nod to the wind, but they don't really work with it very heavily. This game really, it's all about the wind, which is sort of neat. So I'm anxious to try it out, but I got a lot of assembly first to get there.
We're going to play it yesterday, but no ships.
We got distracted. I only built 3 of those things. I'm like, I got a long way to go. So it's not designed for it's not a low model count at all. I think you're going to want to have 10 chips aside for it to really work.
Now, is it a point system? Are you building your
Yeah,
fleet?
actually, the components are surprisingly robust. You got all these little plastic boats. You got this big board. You got these little cards that match your ships, and there's numbers on the bases of the ships and numbers on the cards to sync them up. Then the cards are actually the size of refrigerator magnet. You know those business cards people give you to stick on your fridge? Yeah. They're that thickness, and they actually are magnets because there's also little round magnet tokens you put on your cards to mark damage. And they stick to them. They don't fall off by accident. So it's really got some pretty high-level components for its price point, which I believe is around $65 for 24 plastic boats. And it's also got little plastic forts you put on the table and all this card stock. So it's a lot of components. The rules look interesting. I got to try it out, but it's a really interesting game. It's right now only available in Russia. Dan's got a copy, but I think they're considering, I think GameSleuth is looking at kickstarting it in the U.S. So that's what's going on with it now. And I got a chance to kind of play with it a little bit.
Interesting.
Yeah. Okay, now so this section here for new listeners and Eric is we talk about other geeky stuff like books, comic books, movies, TV shows, whatever you're doing. So Eric, what have you been doing? Video games, whatever. What have you been doing outside of our normal hobby there?
Well, sure. Before I get into that, not that I wasn't interested in you talking about the modeling stuff, guys, but I was Googling Space Dice, and it was at spacedice.com, which is pretty easy to remember. And so, yeah, if you want that game, that's where it is.
Oh, spacedice.com. I'll go check that out.
Yes, and it's $20, which
that's
is
cheap.
reasonable for
how many dice?
15 dice.
That's not bad.
15 custom D12s.
Yeah,
it's not bad.
That's
Dungeon Plunder is my latest iOS obsession. Mm-hmm. Have you guys played this?
I have not.
It's a I guess the title is a roguelike, a term that I've never really heard until recently.
Oh, yes.
A randomly generated map. And you've got your little adventurer, and you head around the map, and you're trying to complete quests and defeat bad guys. But the way combat is handled is with a slot machine.
Nice.
You roll the slots, and if you're a mage, for example, you want to get mana, and you want to get little symbols of magic staves, and you get 2 spins of the reels, and you can save a certain number. You say, well, I want to keep this slot, and this slot, and this slot, and then I'll roll again, and that result is what you do to your opponent. You can regain health, and you can get defense, and you can attack, all that fun stuff. And that's how combat is resolved. And I find it strangely addictive. It pushes the same buttons as Puzzle Quest, if you played that.
Yep.
There's also some RPG games that use the coin drop, like the arcade game where you're trying to push coins off the side of the, off the end of the play area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, doing an RPG with weird mechanisms, for some reason, sets off bells in my brain, and I've enjoyed it. It's called Dungeon Plunder.
Fun.
It costs, I think, $2 in the App Store.
Wow, nice.
Cool.
Finally had a chance to watch Wreck-It Ralph, now that it's out on Blu-ray. This is the Disney film about the classic arcade games, and I enjoyed this one tremendously.
Oh, we did too. Our family loved it. We caught it in the theaters. We really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure I watched it solo before I showed it to my 5-year-old, because I wasn't sure how he'd handle some of the first-person shooter segments, and it's got a rather scary, final bad guy. I haven't really made a decision yet whether I'm going to show it to him, or just wait a little bit longer.
Yeah,
it
tough.
also has a bunch of references that he isn't going to get, and short of forcing him to play Q*bert, I don't know what I'm going to do. Maybe it's just going to be stuff that goes over his head. How did your kids handle it?
Well, mine are a little older. They're 8 and 10 at that time, and it went over very well. They didn't get all the references. It's kind of like some of those Disney films. They also throw in adult nods to the adults in the audience. So I was laughing at all the the Q*bert jokes and the older school video game jokes. But what's interesting is with the advent of Minecraft and other 8-bit sort of flashback video games that the kids these days love, which including my kids, they're total Minecraft addicts. The 8-bit references, they kind of thought it was a Minecraft type. They didn't really understand that that's how Donkey Kong used to look, which is the main character sort of spoof of Donkey Kong, right? So it's that sort of thing. But they loved like all the little girl, the Sugar Rush stuff. They thought that was fantastic, and they really they kept asking me, "Is there going to be a Sugar Rush game coming out? Because I really want to play that." So they did enjoy it a lot.
Oh, cool.
So I think you sound like it too, but that's a tough age for those darker moments, even in family films. Sometimes I remember when my kids were that age, it was tough. You never really knew. Even scenes where just was really dark, they got scared. If the theater got too dark.
We certainly had a reaction during Brave, the more recent Pixar film.
Yeah.
With the bear scenes, and there were some pretty intense moments, and he definitely had a reaction to that. So I'm wary right now of showing him something with too intense a scary scene.
Right.
Yeah.
Speaking of scary scenes, Doctor Who's back.
Yeah.
Are you guys Doctor Who fans?
I'm totally. My wife and I are complete and total Whovians. Yes, we are.
And I've liked the odd the odd season now and then.
Okay. So the new companion is in.
Yep.
So far, I'm enjoying it. It's hard. I like the chemistry between Matt Smith and Jenna Louise Coleman.
Yes, me too.
I think it's a very fast-paced repartee that they've got going on. And if they maintain that, it could become quite endearing. It's hard to tell where things are going. They put out all these teasers at the beginning of a season, or half season, I guess in this case.
Right.
And it's hard to get over Rory and Amy, but I think things might work out pretty well. I'm also excited to hear things about the 50th anniversary special, which we're starting to hear trickling bits of information on.
Oh, yes.
Have you been following any of that?
Oh, well, my wife does a Doctor Who podcast with some other people, so she's really into all that stuff. So, yeah, she's been following it very, very intently.
Does she get into the spoilers and stuff, or is she trying to...
No, they avoid the spoilers. They're more about, it's more like who's writing what and, who's going to be involved in the project and has this actor signed on yet and that kind of stuff,
Well, as far as I know, we've got David Tennant and Billy Piper.
Yeah.
So the 10th Doctor and his companion will be somehow involved. But so far, I have not heard of any other doctors signing on. In fact, many have come out and said, no, we are not involved. Or even in Christopher Eccleston's case, saying, I was asked and did not want to be involved.
Yeah.
They may be using imagery from previous episodes.
Some CGI or something. Yeah.
I'm excited. It's going to be cool.
I think it's going to be awesome. Now, let me ask you this, because I haven't... So, I really enjoy... What I like about Doctor Who sometimes is how they can make everyday objects scary.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you can never look at a statue of an angel the same as again, which is awesome. You're just walking around, I'm like...
Yes.
And they did it again the first episode this season. I now cannot look at my Wi-Fi icon.
Yes.
Quite the same.
Don't worry.
Which I thought was awesome. The second episode, to be honest, I haven't seen it yet. My wife had to watch it before me for her podcast, so she watched it. She was disappointed. Did you like the second episode this season?
I've heard people have been disappointed. I don't necessarily think disappointment is the right word. It just didn't strike me as being stellar.
Wasn't as strong. Okay.
It's okay to have a little bit of treading water. It laid out some breadcrumbs.
Yeah.
It was good. Any Doctor Who episode is better than a not Doctor Who.
That's a good point. Good point.
So I'm fine with it, but I did hear that there was a certain amount of negative reaction to it.
All right, great. Well, excellent, Eric. That's great to know you like your Doctor Who. That's fantastic. Craig, what have you been doing?
Let's see. A lot of writing. I finished my Star Wars assignment, which was awesome. I got to create, or I should say, port in 3 iconic species from Star Wars into the new game system for Fantasy Flight games. So that was exciting.
Cool.
And then I got to my newest assignment for Fantasy Flight is a super, really mega secret assignment. That's easily the biggest assignment I've ever done for Fantasy Flight, and a big, giant, huge secret. So it was really cool.
You were such a tease.
The Merchant of Venus expansion, isn't it?
It's a what?
The Merchant of Venus expansion.
Oh, man. Now I have to kill you.
Oh.
Sorry, Eric.
Oh, things were going so well.
They were. The second issue of Wild West Exodus, the comic, came out about 4 days ago. So that's exciting to see that. See that the first one wasn't a fluke. That's always nice. Busy writing number 3 now and wrapping up the rule book that will go out in August. So it's very funny because now that the Kickstarter's over, it's like all of a sudden there's real deadlines.
Mm-hmm.
Up until then, it was like, yeah, do this whenever and do that whenever. And now all of a sudden it's like we've hired all the people that are actually going to put the book together and they can't believe you're not done yet. Like, okay, I'll finish. So that's exciting. So I'm involved in this Sales of Glory Kickstarter. I've got Kickstarter mania all of a sudden, and I blame Wild West Exodus. And I blame that and Russ and all of his, look at what I got for Sedition Wars. So I'm like eagerly looking for what I call my Sedition Wars. Mm-hmm. And I thought maybe Sales of Glory would be it. And I like the Wings of Glory game mechanics. I like them a lot. And I love Age of Sail games. And so I thought this would be great. And now I'm not. I mean, it's a good Kickstarter. I think they're going to have a good game, but at the same time, the art direction seems to be going in a direction that doesn't really appeal to me. It makes it look more like a toy game than a miniatures game with the thickness of the base and the artwork and stuff. So I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm watching what happens with the last few stretch goals, and I'm not right now. I've got like the get one of everything pledge level because I was like, Sedition Wars, I've got to do that. And now I'm like, yeah, I don't know, but I probably shouldn't. I probably should scale it down because I don't even know if I'm going to like the game. So why? Like, it's not like Sedition Wars, like spend $100 and get 1 billion of everything. It's more like spend a few $100 and you get one of each. And so I should stay away from Age of Sail stuff right now and scale back my pledge so that I just get the basic game. Instead, I went and I downloaded. And I've listened to it before. Actually, the first books on tape I ever listened to through Audible, I borrowed from Russ, and they were Patrick O'Brien's Aubrey Maturin series. Mm-hmm. And I went and I used a credit, and I got for myself the book 1, Master and Commander, and I'm listening to it now. And now I'm like, oh, how can I not get one of everything for Sales of Glory just in case? So that's a bad idea, because if you're looking for Audible books and you're looking for Age of Sail stuff, you cannot go wrong with Patrick O'Brien's Master and Commander stuff. Patrick O'Brien's Aubrey Maturin. Stories are cool.
Yep.
The narration is awesome. The lingo is spot on and really cool and evokes the action, not only the action, but just the time and just the slang that the guys are using, not only on the ship, but when they're on shore. And it's just got everything to just fully immerse you in the Age of Sail. And the thing about Patrick O'Brien is every now and then he gets really into things like sail plans and rigging schemes. And with an Audible book, all you got to do is kind of phase out for a second.
Right. Or turn on the double speed.
Exactly. If you're reading, you've got to. And the narrator, who's awesome, is a little slow. So I have at times gone, I think I might want to speed him up. I haven't, but he has a very deliberate delivery. Every now and then I'm like, oh my god, did it stop? Oh, he's got it again. But so I'm loving that, really enjoying that, and of course I got that through Audible.
Yes.
Russ, if our listeners are interested in Audible, like let's say they just cannot get enough of Eric's voice, they're hearing it for the first time on our podcast, and they're thinking, "Oh my God, I need that man to read me books."
Right?
How would they go about finding him and finding Audible?
What you want to do is go to the D6 Generation website and click on the Audible logo on the right-hand side, and that will hook you up with a special deal from us and Audible. How this works is you're going to get a 30-day free Audible trial and a free Audible credit, which basically, for the most part, gives you a free Audible book from their massive library of hundreds of thousands of books, and including many, many, many books read by Eric.
Yep.
You get one of these books, and even if you decide after 30 days to cancel and pay nothing, you keep that Audible credit and that book forever. What's awesome is you can let your subscription lapse, and your library stays there. And I've been a member since like 2001, and I have, I don't know, hundreds of books already. And literally, the Master Commander series kept me in book listening for an entire year straight. I just listened. It's like 21 books. It's huge. And they're all like 50-hour books.
Plus, in digital, they sent you the discs.
Yes, back in the day. Yeah. Fantastic stuff, and again, the nice thing about the 30-day trial, in addition to the free Audible credit, is, as Craig's mentioned before on the show, they have these sales once in a while. Because audiobooks normally, if you go to Barnes and Noble to buy them, or if you even buy them straight up, they're usually like $20 to $30 to $50 for one book. And Audible, you get them for your credit, but also they'll have sales like $10 for an audiobook, $5 for an audiobook. So if you happen to be in that window and they're having sales, you can grab some great books cheap, even while you're still in your free trial.
Absolutely. It's awesome. And we've gotten a bunch of emails recently like, hey, I was driving when you talked about that one series. So very quickly, and I think Russ will agree with me, if you're looking for sci-fi, you want James S.A. Corey's Expanse series right now is what we're super excited about.
Yep.
If you're looking for fantasy, you're looking for our money, or for my money anyway, not to put words in Russ's mouth, Joe Abercrombie's series that starts with the blade itself. You cannot go wrong. And I would once again put another vote in for Patrick O'Brien's Aubrey Maturin series if you're looking for Age of Sail.
Or anything read by Eric.
Yes.
Read by Eric.
Eric, you have a favorite book from Audible you've been reading lately or listening to lately?
Yeah, the self-serving answer or the just general answer?
Both. We'll take one of each.
Okay, so self-serving is the care and feeding of rubber chickens. Which I actually get paid when people download that one. Also, Arthur C. Clarke's Childhood's End, I think you can't go wrong with. That was an Audie-nominated book. So I must have done something right on that one.
Nice. Well done. And
nice.
Clarke is fantastic. I'm a big fan of his, so I'll check that out.
Yeah, so that's my listening and reading. I fell for the marketing gimmick. I'm reading John Scalzi's Old Man's War series, which, Russ, you would like. The problem is that audio-wise, it's very bizarre. You can't just get one of his books in Audible. You have to get like chapters 1 through 4 and things like that. It's very strange. Weird. It's not easy and it's not cheap.
Is that because it's so long?
No, they're not long at all. I'm reading it. I've got it on my Kindle. And that's how they got me, because Kindle's like, hey, for $2, you can get the first chapter of this book. And we're going to do one chapter a week for 13 weeks. It's going to be great. And I totally got sucked in and fell for it. And then I'm like, wow, this universe is really cool. And these soldiers are awesome. And wait a minute, there's another. Wait, that's great. That'd be great for audio. Oh, that's not going to work. And so I ended up buying I'm on book 2 of the Old Man's War series. And just very quickly, they call it Old Man's War because it's awesome. The colonial armed forces that, like, they've basically, Earth has been, they control who leaves Earth, the colonial, so it's almost the reverse of most sci-fi stories where, like, Earth is the center, or, there's a bunch of different people. The humans are basically all one political group, but the colonies rule and they control who gets to leave Earth. And they only allow people from third world countries that have problems with population and things to leave and colonize the other planets. And their army is entirely made up of retirees. And the retirees are all for all kinds of really cool socio-political reasons. Most of the retirees are only accepted from industrialized countries, and you have to be 75 years old. And when you're 75 years old, they bring you up in a space and they basically pluck out your consciousness and plunk you into a genetically created soldier body that's like you at age 18.
Huh.
And there's all kinds of cool sci-fi stuff that goes on with that. And it's very much, Russ, I think you would like it because it's very much like a John Ringo sort of scenario. Nice. Lots of different combat, lots of different technology, lots of different bad guys. It's a very, very harsh, unforgiving universe out there. So I'm really, really enjoying that. And just very quickly, I found the Walking Dead season finale to be very disappointing, and I found the Game of Thrones season premiere to be awesome.
Nice. All right.
And you just cannot get enough Peter Dinklage even on Saturday Night Live.
Oh, that was a great bit.
It was awesome.
That was good.
Okay, right. Russ, what are you doing?
All right, let's see here. Well, let's see. I finished Caliban's War, listening to that on Audible. Loved it. We'll have to do when the third book comes out, we'll do a little review of that thing.
That's soon,
yeah.
Just a couple months away.
Also doing my preparations for the Iron Kingdoms RPG, so I'm excited about that this Friday. And we're running along, so that's my achievements.
From the dawn of time we came, rolling dice down through the centuries. We are the D6 generation.
We stand, and here we fall. History won't care at all.
Craig, I got to stop doing the show. I just realized this is out on iPad now. I'm gonna go download. I gotta go download this. I'm sorry.
But I thought we were doing the Lone Wolf ad.
I don't have time. I gotta go download Hero Lab on iPad. It just came out here. You talked it up. I'm gonna go download this. Hang on.
Okay. Well, anyway, Lone Wolf Development is the creator, or are the creators, to be grammatically correct, of the best gaming software out there. If you're a role player, you want Hero Lab.
Ooh, here it is.
It's available on iPad now.
It is. I'm downloading it right now. It's on. It's in the little store.
It's so fast.
Sorry.
Multitasking. You play miniatures games. Army Builder is the number one go-to program for that. You want to have you do collectible games, then Card Vault, you can't go wrong. Not whether it's a model or whether it's a card or a miniatures collectible game. Card Vault will help you manage your collection. Not only manage your collection, also help you build your deck, do all that icky math stuff and everything. Help you with that. It's really the way to go. And now, of course, we're looking at Tournament Ace coming up soon if you're running tournaments. And let's not forget Realmworks that was just successful kickstarted.
Oh, yeah. I've been running my...
There, yeah, Russ has been loving it. We've been loving playing it with Russ. It is just an exciting time to be a gamer and a computer nerd in one.
It is. And next month, Realmworks actually becomes available to everyone. Or, well, I guess actually the early Kickstarters get it. June is when it comes out. But, yeah, and I just downloaded Hero Lab for iPad. It works for your Pathfinder character creation. No easier way to create a character than with this thing. So definitely head on over to wolflayer.com and check out all the hotness. And now, what's in the news? With the shout-outs, looking for a War Machine group on Facebook? Search for Mokan War Machine and join the discussion. That's Mokan. Just search for it on Facebook. Speaking of War Machine, let's jump in right off the bat with some Privateer press news. Up first here, Privateer has put up information and pricing on the new Convergence faction stuff. First of all, we got the starter box for Convergence. It's going to be $44.99, and it includes 4 plastic models. You got the Warcaster Forge Master Synthreon. You got Cypher, the Heavy Vector. You got the Mitigator Light Vector, and the Galvanizer Light Vector as well. And for those not in the know, a Vector is the Convergence version of a Warjack. Also, they've announced the prices for the Convergence faction book, $30 for the soft cover and $40 for the hardcover. Prices look about the same as normal there. Let's see in other news. Fantasy Flight Games. Lots of Fantasy Flight Games news going on. They are just cranking out the stuff. Up first, they got X-Wing Battlefields. This is a box set of 12 tiles. These are very hard, thick tiles, double-sided with beautiful art on them for a space battlefield. They're durable, a 2.5 millimeter fiberboard. The smooth matte finish on the stock. There's pictures of like the Death Star in the distance with stars. Basically Star Wars themes, some of the major planets you'll recognize in the movies in the background. And that's coming out in Q3. Also, Fantasy Flight Games announced the Star Wars Experience. Guess what? Happening on, of course, the weekend of May the 4th. May the 4th be with you. Very exciting stuff going on there. Big event going on at the Fantasy Flight Game Center. And the big hotness there is that if you do go to this event, you'll be able to one of the first people ever to see the next set of X-Wing ships coming out that have yet to be announced. So that's pretty exciting. And last little bit of Fantasy Flight. There's 2 more bits of Fantasy Flight news. First of all, more details of the Labyrinth of Ruin, the new expansion for Descent. This expansion, as we mentioned before on the show, will feature an entirely new campaign for Descent 2. The prior expansions have only been sort of add-ons. This is actually a whole new story, whole new campaign. And the two new heroes included in the expansion are highlighted on their website. If you head over to Fantasy Flight Games, you'll be able to read all about them and see their cards up close and personal. And final news in Fantasy Flight Games, Battlestar Galactica. You thought it was over, but no, another expansion for the board game. Now they're adding, of course, more characters you can play, more little events that can happen. Yeah, but tell them about the thing. Yes, Wakeland doesn't care about any of that. All he cares about are the new plastic Cylons that are now used for boarding actions instead of the little cardboard chits. So yeah, it's just like the second expansion. The first expansion had little plastic base stars. Now you have plastic boarding Cylons. That's all you need. Yeah, according to Wakeland, you can just you're going to buy the expansion just for the plastic Cylons. How can you not? Let's see. We had Star Wars news earlier. How about some more Star Wars news? This time, not from Fantasy Flight Games. Stronghold Games has announced Space Sheep. Yes, Space Sheep, as in, little furry things that generate wool. Yes, Space Sheep. The reason it has to do with Star Wars, if you look at the box cover, it is actually done up cartoon style with sheep characters, but very much looks like the original Star Wars poster with, Luke with a lightsaber over his head, or I should say Luke sheep, and then Princess Leia sheep on the side there, and a giant sort of wolf, like the big bad wolf in the background in place of Vader's head. This is sort of interesting. So basically, the deal with Space Sheep is it is a 1 to 8 player customizable co-op game in which each player sort of work together and try to puzzle solve in real time together. Sort of interesting, looks very kind of exciting. So if you're interested in that, and the theme looks very fun, and the artwork looks fun as well. So check that out. Let's see, other news. Oh, Hero Lab has just announced that Hero Lab Pathfinder for the iPad is out, and it is free. And the reason it's free is because if you have Hero Lab, the data files transfer right over to your iPad now, displaying a really lovely Pathfinder player sheet. And as you tap on elements of the player sheet, you can interact with it. So, for example, you can tap on a skill. It'll tell you the stats of the skill, how the skill works, and even roll the dice for you and tell if you succeed or fail. Pretty cool. Let's see. Also, Spartan Games announced a bunch of releases for Dystopian Wars. Big news here, 2 new factions. Talk about factions. Dystopian Wars has got a lot. They've just added the Chinese Federation and the Australians to the mix here of the world combat that is Dystopian Wars. The Chinese faction got a lot of great preview pictures up of the fleet coming out for them, as well as a giant flying fortress, which looks pretty awesome. Also in the announcement, new Firestorm Armada ships that were voted on by the community. So new designs are available and coming out as well. So check that out if you're a Firestorm Armada fan. Still some good stuff. Let's see. Oh, and a new game from our friends at Game Salute, Frontier Skies. And not a lot of information yet. It's going to be 1 to 4 players. 2 to 4 players. Artwork's sort of interesting. It is, let's read the press release here. Frontier Skies transforms the art, characters, and world of Gaia Online into an exciting adventure with strategic decisions at every turn. So that's kind of cool. You're trying to compete to build the best airship and then managing your crew and doing all that kind of stuff. Sounds kind of fun. If you like steampunk airship building, I'm going to have to check that one out. And finally, the Robotech RPG Kickstarter is now live. Oh, yeah, baby, already back in it. Yeah, Weekland's already in. This is, again, the Robotech Tactical RPG. Now, what's interesting about this Kickstarter, a lot of details are out now. It's a box set that comes with the rules for tactical combat in the Robotech universe. It is designed as a plug-in to the Palladium Robotech RPG, but it's also a standalone miniature combat game. And in the box, not only do you get the rules for fighting miniature combat, you also get lots of miniatures. They've got 3 miniatures for each Veritech. There's the 3 different forms a Veritech can take, right? The Guardian form, sort of the hybrid form, the jet form, and then the robot form there. And then they've also got, of course, a bunch of Zendradi bad guys, as well as a bunch of different flavors of the various mechs used by the Earth forces. Very, very cool stuff. The miniatures look fantastic. If you are a Robotech fan at all, head on over and check out this Kickstarter. And that's what's in the news.
And have you ever really just wanted to dig into some history, though? I mean, maybe you play history games and maybe you don't, but most of us come from someplace where we really like something about history, right?
Oh, yeah.
And you need some some first person sources, some primary sources. And one of the best places to get those primary sources is a brand new publishing company called Winged Hussar.
Yeah, like let's say you want to know about Julius Caesar. No problem. Check out the Gallic Wars or Gaelic? Garlic?
I
Gaelic. Garlic would be good though.
Gaelic is Irish.
I'm getting hungry now. But anyway, so the Gaelic Wars, Gallic Wars?
Yeah.
Okay, Gallic Wars. See, you'd know how to pronounce this if you wrote this book. Because it's awesome read because not only is it like about what Caesar's doing, but it's actually Caesar's writing.
Words.
Like, it's actual words. Or
Vidi Vici, if you will.
Right? Or, perhaps you don't want to read about a Roman general. How about Frederick the Great? How about that?
One of the greats, really.
Another great book. Again, written all of his strategies, his tactics, great moments in battles with him. And then also, just out now from Winged Hussar Publishing, the Russian Imperial Cavalry in 1914.
Ah, the good old Russian Imperial Cavalry.
Yeah, so you want to learn about how their formations, how they worked, how they fought in that time period. Great book as well. So great, just fantastic reads. Great way to get in there, get you right into history, get you just literally soaking, like palm olive oil, you're soaking in it.
Soaking in it.
Exactly right.
Military history, you're soaking in it.
So check out Winged Hussar Publishing, and don't forget, put in the code D6G to get 5% off.
Yay!
You're listening to the D6 generation. We just love playing around.
Welcome back. Well, we figured since we have Eric Summerer, a.k.a. The Voice, right, Eric? Yes, exactly. I'm doing air quotes now.
The velvet voice.
The velvet. The dulcet tones, if you will.
I'm really the more of the Naugahyde voice.
Naugahyde, nice. Okay, that's interesting. I'm going to say that for later. We figured it'd be great to ask you some questions because I think it's really interesting. So many of us gamers and geeks out there really enjoy our sci-fi, our video games, our audiobooks. A lot of voice work goes into those things. And since you're here, we figured, well, let's just ask you, A, how you got into it, and B, how does it all work, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, one question we have to ask, even though we know you're affiliated with the Dice Tower and obviously are
Which does not get you out of this question.
No, it really doesn't.
There's soft soaping the guests here.
No, I'm just,
In fact, we gaze with some small amount of suspicion anyone who wafts the odor of the Dice Tower in our direction.
Oh, really? Okay, yeah, all right.
okay.
I can understand that.
All right, so we have to ask you, Eric.
Bona fides.
Right. Are you now or have you ever been a gamer?
Actually, no, I'm not. It's all a ruse.
Oh, good.
I'm an actor, you see, and this is all a big method acting thing.
Oh,
no,
right.
no, of course I am. I've played, the classics in growing up, childhood, and really got into it in college when Pokemon crossed my table.
Ooh, Pokemon.
And I fell for that one hard, as did my wife. And for our first year or two of marriage, we were playing that game quite a lot. And in our quest to find more Pokemon cards, we discovered a lot of local game stores, comic book stores, hobby stores, and noticed next to the Pokemon cards that there were these other games that started to look interesting. We led that way through the Looney Labs games. We started getting Flux and Chrononauts.
Wow.
Those sorts of things. And in playing those with our friends, they started bringing their own discoveries. And the three that really hooked us were Transamerica and Settlers and Carcassonne.
Oh, the classics. Look at you.
And when we saw those three, that was it. It was all over. My wife found Board Game Geek. We started visiting a game group. And sooner or later, I can't get out.
Oh, nice. Nice. That's interesting.
They keep dragging you back in.
Right. And you may be the first person I know who, when they talk about experimenting in college, the first thing they say is Pokemon.
That, yes.
I not heard that before. It's interesting. That's great. And it's also cool that your wife is right in there with you. She's a diehard gamer as well then.
Well, certainly she was. We synced up at a certain point, and we were both really into the hobby. She found Board Game Geek first, as well as Spiel Freaks, the old mailing list for the German Euro-style games.
Right.
And so she was really into it, and then she sort of drifted away. She's much more of a social gamer now. If we have friends over, guests for the weekend, she'll certainly play with us, but she has other hobby interests that took her attention, whereas I was hooked for life.
Nice. Okay.
Which is fine. I've come to terms with that. It took a while, but I'm good with it.
That's awesome. That's great. So how did you get into, I guess that's your gaming, so clearly, and then the rest is history, as they say, and you want to go listen to that other podcast called The Dice Tower for all of Eric's summary. But
Interesting in how you got involved with the Dice Tower.
Yeah, how did the first Dice Tower, did that come from the voiceover stuff?
Grand old man in the room now.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'm certainly entrenched in the organization at this point, but I wasn't for a while. I was just a listener. And I started listening somewhere around the 30s as far as episodes go. Joe Stedman was still on the show, and Sam was starting to show up as sort of a third chair guest host sort of personality. And somewhere around, I don't know, episode 70 or 80, I tried to enter a contest, as lots of listeners are wont to do. And at the bottom of the email, I told Tom, hey, if you ever need any voice work, I am a voice actor, because at this point I was full-time, and I was not terribly busy. And I said, hey, you need anything? I'm here. And I was looking for a creative outlet to sort of counterbalance the corporate, boring recordings that I was doing.
Right.
And he said, yeah, sure. Why not? I could always use somebody to help. And I did more and more and more and more and more. And next thing I knew, I was co-hosting.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. And that is also a great segue into the whole voiceover thing.
Right.
Yes.
So-
now there's
Well,
overlap.
So great. So how did you just wake up one day at like age 10 and were like, I want to be a voice announcer? How does one get into that area of work? How does that career path start?
it wasn't what I always wanted to do. I'm a voice actor because the Muppets never called me back. Somewhere in college, I went to school for television, radio, film.
Okay.
I was at Syracuse University at the Newhouse School of Public Communications, which they always like to say because it sounds like they're going to get you a job.
Right.
And I was learning all sorts of television and film production methods. And through that process, I was doing a college TV station. We did a show that was called Syracuse Live. And our big claim to fame is that we had a puppet band leader. It was sort of a David Letterman style talk show format. There was a host who was a human being.
Right.
And then we decided, why not? Let's have a puppet co-host. And that was me.
So you were the
And,
puppet voice right there.
It sounded like this. He was hairy, and he played the keyboards.
And I really enjoyed doing that, and I eventually started focusing on what it took to become a Muppeteer. I did a senior thesis film called Felt Ambition,
Oh, wow.
which was the story of a vaudevillian puppet trying to break back into the industry.
Nice.
It's a classic. You may actually be able to find clips on YouTube.
I'll have to go look now.
I have lots of excuses ready to go for that. It's an entertaining project. And at the end of school, I did send an audition tape to the Muppets. I had also interned with the Jim Henson Company and Sesame Street for the previous summer before senior year. So I had some connections, and I found out what I needed to do to audition, and I sent in the tape, and it just never happened. I got a follow-up, and I just didn't break in, and eventually I had to give up trying to pursue that. After pestering the Jim Henson Company enough, I started looking into radio. And my wife and I settled in Connecticut, and I started working at a radio station, Beethoven.com in Hartford, Connecticut.
Wow.
Which is an internet station. So I had a worldwide reach.
Right.
And I started as an intern there and in the upstairs hard rock station, and eventually became the music director and morning show host
Oh, wow.
at Beethoven.com. So I was doing classical music for some time, for about 3 years or so, until 2004. And in the process of working in a radio station, you do commercials. It's just part of being an employee in a radio station.
Yeah.
You don't get paid extra for them. You're just in the building, and they expect you to do the commercials for the station.
Right.
I was enjoying it. I thought that was a lot of fun, and I tried to do more and more of that, and I'd seek that sort of work out. That led to some part-time work doing these corporate recordings, where if you ever have to do, lots of people, if you have a desk job, you may have had to do these e-learning courses.
Oh, yes.
Where you sit in front of a computer and somebody like me narrates the learning topics to you. It's incredibly boring most of the time. Rarely is it interesting, but that's me, and somebody's getting paid to do it. So I started doing that, and that led to me seeking out more and more of these types of jobs. And somewhere around 2004, I said, I like doing this more than I like the daily grind of the radio gig.
Mm-hmm.
And it was getting in the way of me actually auditioning and being available to do those sorts of jobs. And I was fortunate enough to have a wife with a stable enough job that I could leave the station and not make anything for a while and still be able to sort of build up my business. So in October 2004, I quit the radio station,
Wow.
Built a studio in my home, and started auditioning, sending out demos, and just working like crazy. And not being terribly busy because of it, which is where emailing Tom Vassell came in.
Right.
But eventually, I had one client that I was working for quite a bit that I had maintained those relationships after leaving the station. And that led to a couple more. And eventually, I started getting, the machinery starts to work. And one client that likes you is going to keep using you.
Right.
And I didn't have to seek out individual jobs as much because I would get these corporate clients that just kept bringing me back to record and update more courses.
So is that sort of the bread and butter of the of being a voiceover person? Is getting a couple of those big corporate accounts where you do sort of just a lot of the voiceover work for presentations and things?
Well, for me, it is.
Yeah.
It certainly pays the bills, and not having to audition for a bunch of things. I mean, you could go a different route.
Right.
I could be auditioning all the time, constantly auditioning for commercials and for video games and for all these really cool, neat projects. but not getting most of them. And
Right.
it can be very frustrating. It's like pounding the digital pavement, and it can just wear you down pretty quickly. So having a client that just emails me and says, here's the script, read it in the next 3 days,
Right.
we'll pay you, it works out pretty well. And so I really can't turn that sort of work down. It just works.
Yeah. Now, do you still find enjoyment? I mean, what is the most fun kind of of thing to do? I guess is it commercials? Is it a little bit acting in a corporate thing, or what kind of things do you like to do?
Well, corporate is certainly the opposite of fun.
Okay.
It's often formulas and very dry corporate language, and it's mind-numbing sometimes.
Yeah.
Which is why it pays well, I think. My favorite type of work is audiobooks.
Really? Now, I wanted to follow up on that because, of course, I am, as Craig, as anyone who listens to the show knows, that Craig and I are huge Audible fans. We listen to a lot of audiobooks, and of course, we've noticed you out there a couple times. I'm like, oh my God, that's Eric. And when I hear you, I'm like, I keep expecting you to review a game in the middle of a book I'm listening to, which is kind of freaky.
It's very weird. I've had friends who will download, say, Childhood's End, which is probably my biggest name title. This is the Arthur C. Clarke sci-fi classic, and they'll download it. And they'll start listening like, this sounds really familiar. They for some reason missed that I was the narrator. And eventually it dawns on them that it's me, and they have this weird moment where I'm now telling them a story, but they know who I am. It's fun. I love doing audiobooks because everyone is different. And each one requires a certain amount of investment on the front end on my part. I have to read the book first. I have to invest myself in these characters and sort of create these characters to figure out what they're going to sound like and make sense of the story in my head, and then try and bring that out for the listener in actually recording it. And every book has a slightly different challenge. There's always one character that's going to give me trouble, or if it's a subject matter in a nonfiction book that I don't know, that's going to have some language that I'm unfamiliar with.
Right.
There's always a challenge that I have to overcome with each book, and I feel like I've learned something by the end of it. And that's just so much more entertaining than doing a Six Sigma course or a bunch of mathematical formulas.
Right. So how did you get into like the audiobook thing? Is it I'm always a little curious about that too, because I know I think Audible now has their own recording thing, but for a while there, it was, I think, just the different publishers record them and then submit them to Audible. How does all that work? Are you familiar with that process?
Audible is my primary employer for audiobooks. Most of my work has been directly for them. They have their own production facilities in Newark, and they also employ me out of my home studio.
Oh, great.
And I think I recognize that I was incredibly lucky falling into the audiobooks. There are lots of, if you start looking and exploring the voiceover industry and you try and look at ways to get into it, you'll find lots of people who are willing to teach you the skills you need. And I certainly recommend that. If that's something that anyone is looking at and pursuing, you do need training. You can't just buy a microphone and expect to do this properly. There are some techniques and some tricks and some approaches that you sort of need to know to do it right. And so I recommend finding a good teacher. And I had taken a voiceover seminar or two with a guy named Pat Fraley. He's a big animation guy out in LA, and he does these seminars and stuff. And he had done an audiobook seminar. It was a weekend in New York, and I got a demo out of it and just got a lot of narration help and approaches in doing audiobooks because it was something I was interested in doing. Came out of it with a demo, came out of it with an approach and a marketing plan, and put together a demo online, and Audible found it.
Oh, wow.
They happened to be looking at that particular moment for new talent. I think they were expanding their facilities. They had just probably opened their production facilities in Newark. In fact, I started recording in New York before their Newark facility was open.
Oh, wow. So you're really early on then.
Their roles, and they tracked me down. They asked me to do some custom narration work as an audition, and they liked me. And the first book they threw me into was Ken Kesey's Sometimes a Great Notion, which was the book he wrote after One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Right.
It's a 630-page epic. It took 40 hours to read.
Wow.
And I think 8 days of traveling into New York to do it. And that was my first gig for Audible. easy. But it's certainly, sink or swim right there. Let's see how you're going to do.
Well,
something must have worked
Yeah.
because they brought me back.
That's fantastic. So how does so you said you absorb the book a little bit. Now you from the books I've listened to, it sounds like you're the kind of narrator who likes to sort of change nuances when you do different characters, right? So the listener can kind of understand that this is character A versus character B.
Absolutely.
And I've always how do you keep that straight in your head? Especially when there's a lot of characters in the book. Is there a trick to that, or you just kind of practice really?
Well, it's funny because I'm here in the booth and I actually have a large notebook in front of me. Let me wave it in front of the mic here.
Oh, that helps. I can see that now.
Oh, very good radio.
Yes, it is a giant notebook, and as I read a book, anytime a character speaks, I write down in the notebook that character's name. I'll write down any physical descriptions that might lend itself to their voice. I might get attitude descriptions down, what other characters say about that character. Sometimes they're very clear. The author's extremely clear about what that character sounds like. Other times I have to just sort of figure it out. And I work my way through the book that way in my read-through. When I'm done reading the book, I then go back and I assign voices to each character. I'm looking at my page now. I have one guy, I say gruff, bluster, low.
Yeah.
Another character is alto, bold, crisp diction, croak, lending to age.
Oh, wow, cool.
Description, I will then read the character, and I don't really know what they sound like until I get in the booth and make it happen. So the first time that character speaks, I may take a take or two to make sure I nail them down, and then once the voices are all sort of on the chessboard, so to speak, then I can sort of make them breathe and have them interact with each other.
That's really cool. Now, I can imagine if you're doing like 1 8-hour session, and I think I understand what you're saying when you're kind of sort of like when you first read the book, you sort of get in your head your idea of this guy sounds like an older gentleman or whatever, and then for the 8-hour session, you sort of make it up and you stick with it because it's easy. Have you ever had to come back to a sequel of a book with the same character in it and try to recreate the same voice does it just come right back? Is it like riding a bike, or do you have to kind of work with it or re-listen to your old self doing it again? Or
I have had to do that. I did a book called Stark's War, and it's a Jack Campbell book, sci-fi, military guy on the moon. Pretty interesting story, but I only did the first book of the trilogy when I first did it, and went through the book just like I normally do and assigned the characters, and I'll often give my best voices to the largest characters.
Sure.
The guy who's going to talk the most, I want to have in my general comfortable range. I don't want to talk like this for the entire book. It'll hurt. And so after I've done all that, for the first book, it all made sense. But then when I got to the sequel, which I got, I think, a year later, I got the other two books. And one, I had to purchase the book from Audible so that I could go back and listen to what I did the first time.
That just doesn't seem fair.
They may have given me a credit on that one, but I had my notes. But the notes, as I said, aren't really everything. Until you actually read it, there's little subtle things that sort of come into the moment when you create these characters for the first time. And so I didn't have all the information I needed without having to listen to what I had done before. But the real trick is that there were some characters who were one-liners.
Oh, no.
In the first book, they said a couple of things in the heat of battle or something, and I just gave them the most throwaway voice I could, because that's what I'll do last. I'll give all the major characters the best voices and make sure they separate well and they can discuss well and you know who's talking. And then, the grunts all get the generic voices so that they fit in the scene. I'll give them the extreme highs and lows and all sorts of stuff. Some of these characters became fully fleshed out people in the sequel book.
Oh, no.
And I was stuck, at least partially, with having to read these characters the way they appeared in the previous book. I ended up sort of shifting them a little bit. Because who is going to go back when they hear this particular character in the sequel and go, you know what, I'm going to go back and load up the first book and make sure you read it exactly the same way with that character.
Right.
No one does that. I try and keep it as close as I can, but there's going to be some drift just because my voice is slightly different from day to day.
Right.
And my attitude's going to be different, or my vocal quality, if I have a cold one day, it's going to be a little bit different. I try my best, but it's not going to be perfect.
Now, how much latitude do you have making up these voices and these characters? Is there like a producer or somebody? Well, I guess it's a producer, but is there like there's not really equivalent of a director on an audiobook, right? There's no one sitting there saying, well, that doesn't really sound like, or do you ever get the author chiming in after he hears the book saying, oh my God, I can't believe he made that guy have a Southern accent, or kind of thing?
Well, in my case, I have a lot of latitude, a scary amount of latitude, if I may say so. I'm a little terrified sometimes with the choices I get to make solo. Higher profile audiobooks. I'm more of a middle tier audiobook narrator. The higher profile projects do have a producer or director on them, but that's expensive. You're employing another person or two to narrate this book or help narrate the book. And the way that these books are being produced, at least in my experience, they want to do it as relatively inexpensively as possible, which means me. And when I'm recording at home, I'll have an engineer here, or Audible will hire an engineer if I go there. And they're running the board, but unless something is really off, they're not going to say anything.
Right.
And I have to try and be as true to the author's vision as I can. If I have a chance, if I have an opportunity to, I like to have a conversation with the author. If they are living and they have contact information, I try and get a hold of them and ask them some questions, but I don't necessarily run through every voice that I'm working on. The book that I'm working on right now is slightly different. It's a different process. This is a fantasy novel, dragons and magic and fun stuff like that. And I have been working pretty closely with the author because we're sharing royalties on the book.
Oh. Cool.
So when it goes on sale, every purchase, half of it is going to come to me, which is pretty neat, but it's also a lot of work up front without getting paid. But in doing this, I'm working with the author very closely, and I've gotten access to her notes, her character descriptions, and she, in her writing of the novel, actually listed some of the voice descriptions that she had in her head of these characters. So I know that some of them have a bass voice or an alto voice or a tenor voice. And that I find extremely helpful because it means I'm close to on the same page as her. She got to hear the first 15 minutes of the book just recently and really gave me the thumbs up for the characters. So that it means I sort of know I'm on the right course.
Right.
And it's good to get that sort of feedback. But most of the time, I don't get to hear from the author once I'm through with that initial conversation.
Now, Eric, speaking about all the different clues and everything, how much time goes into preparing for the book? Like just to give you an example, I just finished possibly one of the worst narrated books I've ever listened to.
Okay, it wasn't mine, was it?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Okay.
Yeah, right off the bat, you're better than this person. But anyway, literally the first sentence in the book is, as soon as the door opened, I knew I was being called on the carpet. So it's a cadet. They're being called into the commandant's office. They're in trouble.
Okay.
The narrator read, the minute the door opened, I knew I was being called into the carpet. And I went, what? And I literally had to stop it and rewind it. And I was like, oh. Now the author is a retired Marine.
Uh-huh.
So I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt and assume she did not write called into the carpet.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm just, and the book was then, that sort of set the tone because the book then it was just mispronounced words. And I'm just wondering, like, do you literally have to read these books several times to sort of familiarize yourself with everything? Because I know the best narrators, as you've stated, that you try to give everybody their own voices. They do that, and I'm always the most impressed when the narrator starts talking in a character voice and it's like whiny, and I'm like, "What? Now, why are they going here?" And then, like, literally in 3 minutes, his whiny voice started to get on her nerves, and I was like, "Oh my God, that's awesome!" There's an awful lot of, prior planning that went into that, and then likewise, you've got a narrator that'll be, and then he said to her, "What are you talking about?" in his stutter.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you didn't read this at all. So
yes.
It makes me wonder when I listen to a really good book on audiobook and when I unfortunately stumble across, and the bad ones are very, very few and far between. But when you get to one, you're just like, like, do you literally and not to be sexist, but I think most women are not sci-fi fans, and so this was a woman narrator, and part of me is like, did they pick you because you have an attractive sounding voice? Because you're not getting any of these sci-fi things right.
Huh.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do, and you hit the nail on the head. It's lack of preparation. You have to read the book first. I usually do one pass on the book to start. Doing more than that, I think it would be a waste of time because you can't remember everything.
Well, that was another problem in my head that I thought.
Yeah, I use a program called iAnnotate. It's an iDevice program for the iPad. And it lets me take a PDF, which is how I usually get the script, and I can highlight in different colors. So that's one of the things that will help me differentiate the characters is I'll highlight those colors. And that is part of my prep as well. On that initial pass-through, I'm highlighting all of the characters, and I'm taking those notes, and I'm getting familiar. But that's one of the things that I would write down. If somebody has a stutter, I'm going to write down has a stutter.
Yeah.
And you need to have done that, especially for something like a mystery novel.
Oh,
because
right.
you need to know what's important and what isn't for you to highlight or obfuscate or at least get right as far as the voices go.
Right.
So that it all makes sense in the end. And I'm terrified when I do a multi-part series that I'm going to learn something in book 2 that I really should have been telegraphing in book 1. I did one in which these characters, this is another fantasy series, and in book 3, they are in limbo, sort of an in-between world between life and death, and they run into what is described as a lifeless, mysterious voice. And without tone, you could barely tell if it was male or female, and so I built the voice based on that.
Yep.
Right.
Then in book 4, I'm introduced to a pair of Australian twins.
Oh, no.
And we later find out that these Australian twins, through all sorts of machinations, are the voice that I was introduced to in book 3. And in book 5, they return and they start interacting with all of the other characters. Now, what I had to do at this point, and this was, I guess, partially my fault for not reading every book in the series before I started recording book 1.
Yeah, but that's still a pretty tall order.
That would be very difficult to do.
Right.
So what I had to do was when this was a homunculus that returned, and when he starts talking in the voice that I used in book 3.
Oh, nice.
He remembers who he is. He starts to get an Australian accent.
Well played.
And hopefully it came out brilliant, but in my mind I was panicking. It's that sort of thing that can happen even with the best preparation.
Right.
So now when I talk with an author, I'll bring up that story and I'll say, is there anything I need to know about a character in book 1 that's going to be revealed in 2 or 3 that will be really important that I know now? So it's good to prepare for stuff like that.
And now speaking to the author, is that where you get all the name pronunciations, especially fantasy in particular?
Yes.
I would imagine.
Oh,
it's
yes.
tricky.
When I did the Dungeons & Dragons books recently, I actually got an official Forgotten Realms pronunciation guide from Wizards of the Coast,
Ooh.
which was kind of cool.
Yeah.
So how do you pronounce the dark elf that's famous, begins with a D?
Well, let me, hang on one second. I actually have it right in front of me. Let's see. Let me get the right.
It is. This is
folder
official
here.
by an official voiceover professional.
You know what? I might get in trouble.
Here it is. This is it.
We'll see.
A final
Okay,
ruling.
Hang on.
Cody
Let me
Jones,
look
you're
it up.
listening. Here we go.
Let's see. I got Shayla Baston. Hang on. This is like an 80-page document. I'm just saying.
Before Tiamat and after Chimera.
Okay, there's a dark elf. It's yikes. No, really, it's a dwarvish. Okay, I passed it. Hang on. Okay. Pronounce every letter. Emphasis on the I, as in fizzed. Drizzed.
There it is. Drizzed. All right. How do you pronounce his last name? Is it in there too, or is it?
Hang on.
No, sorry.
You're putting
Dowarden.
Well, Dorden. Okay, good.
Dowarden.
Drisdorden?
Dowarden.
Jordan.
Emphasis on the second syllable.
I think I got the second one right, but I don't think I was doing the first one right.
Very well. See, I learned something new right now. Look at that.
Now, you didn't hear that from me.
No, that's not official, except it is. So, let me ask you this: Is there a school of thought when doing these audiobooks? And then we'll move on to some other things you've done. But is there a school of thought? Because some narrators definitely try to read it. I don't know if deadpan's the right way, but sort of like without putting a lot of inflection in it. You're just reading the words written on the page and trying not to interpret the author so much. Is that a school of thought, or is that just lazy? Like, or I don't mean to impugn them, but like, is there two different schools of thought on that, or is it kind of like old school, new school?
Yeah, I think I don't know if it's old school, new school, but that is certainly an approach, that you were simply narrating the words. It could be that particular narrator doesn't like doing voices and doesn't feel comfortable doing them. The other approach is that for audiobooks, you don't necessarily want to get as crazy as you would for, say, a cartoon or a video game. You don't want to be totally extreme because it really brings you out of the narrative. The characters in an audiobook, you want to be a little more constrained and within a certain believability realm in order to keep the listener within the world that you're creating. The fantasy stuff, certainly you can get a little more extreme than you would with, say, a Japanese drama. But you try and keep things a little contained more than you would in an animated film, for example.
Do you do a lot of Japanese drama?
I did one, and what I ended up doing was not a Japanese accent, because every character in the book was going to be Japanese. It was also a translation of Japanese, so I read that one fairly straight with my standard accent, just for simplicity's sake, which is another approach, because I could have done the whole thing in a Japanese accent, but I think that would have ended up more muddled, and you'd be focused on my accent more than you would be on the story.
That makes sense. That's interesting. So you mentioned video games. Have you done any video game work?
A couple. Not many. It's the kind of thing, it's one of those things that I would need to do a lot more auditioning for.
Yeah.
And I haven't really pursued in that direction because the audiobooks and the corporate stuff and some podcast I do keeps me busy enough.
Yeah.
But I have done a couple. I was in King of Fighters 2006. I played Iori Yagami, one of the fighting characters. And if you're familiar with the series, it's a Street Fighter style one-on-one fighting game. That's probably the biggest title I was in. I was in another game called Mitron Wars for the PSP. I was in an adventure game called Secret Files 2, which released for the PC and I think the DS, something. I never bought a copy of it. At one point, I play the bartender on a cruise ship, and by the end, I am hanging off of a helicopter screaming at the protagonist. That's all I remember.
Now, was recording for a video game, was it very different then? I mean, obviously it's a lot less lines than an audiobook, I'd imagine, or maybe not. Do you have to record to every possibility, or does it depend on the role?
It depends on the role, but video games are kind of a different animal entirely, because you have to read all of the audio clips for that character, and that's more than just dialogue. That's also if the character makes noise while you're playing the game.
All right.
I did... unfortunately, this was only released in Japan. It was a Metal Slug 3D. And I played Marco, the lead character in this game, which I was all excited about, and then the game never actually came out in the U.S. Bothered me. But I had to do an oof, or you running into something, or you getting hit with something, and it light damage, medium damage, heavy damage. And here's you falling off of a cliff. Here's you completely falling off of a cliff. Here's you almost falling off of a cliff. And a lot of the dialogue is out of context. It's not like you get the entire script. You just have the script for your character. Right. So unless you have a producer who can really explain to you what's going on, all you get is a line and what sort of emotion you're supposed to be having while you read that line. And that's not the way most actors want to work.
Right.
And so you have to sort of figure out how this works. Fortunately, when I've done a few of these, because I have a video game background in playing them, I sort of could figure out what was going on. Well, here's when the user is doing this is what this line is for.
Right.
Or this is a cutscene dialogue, so I know I want to be a little more dramatic here, and here I want to have this attitude. But you have to really fill in the blanks. I think the higher profile projects, if you're talking about Grand Theft Auto or something, that has a lot more direction to it. I think you've got people who are going to explain you the story and really work at coming up with a cohesive whole. But a lot of that stilted dialogue you hear in video games comes simply from the way it's recorded. The actor has a script in front of them, and they've got an emotion that they're supposed to read. They're not in the same room with the other actors. They're just reading the lines the way it says on the page.
Yeah, that does seem really hard. That's cool. That's neat, though. Do you enjoy doing video games?
It's certainly a different sort of work. I really did enjoy it, and getting to see a final product is pretty cool. And then getting to see your name in the credits and stuff. It's a neat endeavor. I'd like to do more of it in the future. It's one of those things that when my kids get a little older and I can travel a little bit more, it's not the sort of thing that I get to do here. I need to travel to Boston or New York or New Jersey to do that.
Right. What about animated series? Have you been in any of those?
I haven't. I guess the closest thing I did was some educational animation. I was Sammy the Salmon in a series of educational videos in Michigan that taught kids to avoid undertow and how to swim safely in rivers, that sort of thing. So that's the closest thing I did.
Yeah, you saved lives, Eric.
Yeah, maybe I did. It was computer animated. I got it on video at one point. It was nice.
Well, that's funny. That's really great. So you said your favorite is the audiobooks, though. That's your most...
Sure. Well, it's the meatiest. I mean, the audiobooks, I guess if you break it down by amount of time you spend, it doesn't pay as well as stuff like, commercials are if you land a commercial that airs nationally, you are certainly, that's where the bread and butter is. But audiobooks are just more engaging. And you spend more time doing them, so you can still make good money. It's just for the amount of time, the hourly wage is on the lower end when you get right down to it. Because it doesn't include preparation, all that stuff I don't get paid for until I sit in the booth and actually record the book. But like I said, every one is different, and it's a challenge, and I like having a challenge. Sitting in front of the mic just reading corporate formulas isn't a challenge.
And you mentioned you did some commercials. Have you done any? What are some of the more exotic commercials that people might know about, or more? Famous any?
I've done a few for like Clear Channel, the large radio conglomerate. That I don't know how much they've aired. Most of it's been pretty local. I can't even really name any major clients. I did a lot of local car dealerships. Nothing really major that you'd be able to hear my voice on.
Now, what's different about doing a commercial? Is it a very different experience from the other types of recording?
It's certainly shorter. It's a lot more focused because every single word has to be exactly the right emphasis. You can't. You don't have the time to spread things out. Like in an audiobook format, I can take all the time I want. I can sort of put all the flowery language in. I can let my sentences breathe, and I can really paint a picture.
Yeah.
In a commercial, you got to meet that 30-second deadline. You got to say it all right. All the diction has to be right where it is. It's a completely different pace. It's a different animal, and one that I haven't really dug my toes into.
All right, excellent. Well, Craig, do you have any more questions about Eric's voiceover work? That's really amazing. I've learned a lot.
I'm just really, I'm in awe. Sounds so cool. Well,
it does.
Coming from I did my acting stuff a long time ago, and of course in the back of your head you're always like, oh, audio would be cool, and then no, but
imagine getting a script, Craig, that was like Game of Thrones. Here's your script.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, I mean, it's very intriguing to me that Eric enjoys the books the most, because that would just, I'm daunted when I'm reading on my own, and I'm doing it in the silence of my own head. And nobody cares if I'm consistent with my voices, but I can only imagine the stress that comes from first of all, you want to do well, but second of all, it's not like a play. I could totally do something different tomorrow night in a play, and it's not like there's going to be people in the audience who were like, "Oh, hey, wait a minute, I was here last night, and that's not the same voice." But this, like, it's recorded, it's out there, it's going to be there forever, and then you're gonna like sequel.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that just seems to me like I'm fascinated and moderately to severely daunted.
Yeah, it does. It's really impressive. Hey, I wanted to ask you. Craig brings up reminded me of a question I wanted to ask you, which is fans. Have you ever gotten an email from a particular fan of an author's work and that just was frustrated with a particular voice you chose or the way you read a particular section of the book?
Well, not me personally, but it's sometimes dangerous to visit the reviews on iTunes or audible.com.
Yeah.
And sometimes you find some nice clips of people who really appreciate your work, but you also find some very interesting comments. I did a paranormal romance novel by Christine Feehan, and she is famous for a lot of these vampires in love romance novels. And this one sort of came outside of her usual. This was, I think, a short story that was published in an anthology somewhere, and so it didn't fall under her normal contract using the narrators that she usually uses. And so I ended up getting this, and I thought I was doing the Carpathian accent, and I go, "You are my life mate," and when it came down to reviews coming out, some people said, "Wow, you finally got a good voice actor to do these stories. Thank you, I appreciated this." But other people on iTunes said I sounded like Count Chocula. once one reviewer said that, like a ton of them hop. "Oh yeah, Count Chocula! Why did they do Count Chocula in this book?" I try not to put too much stock into that. I do the best job I can in the moment, and people are going to read into it what they read into it.
You become a meme. You're your own meme.
That's right. That's awesome.
Chocula.
Count Chocula.
That's great. That's fantastic. And now I know if you ever visit Eric, I know what I'm going to serve you for breakfast.
Yes, thank you.
Excellent. Well, Eric, thanks again for sharing these awesome tales of voiceover work. That's really that was fascinating.
You bet.
And we'll be back shortly to talk about Mice and Mystics. Just like that.
That was good.
An even playing field. A clear set of rules. And a good roll of the dice.
Dice are our vice. We are the D6 generation.
Well, now it's time to talk about our friends at Conquistador Games.
Conquistador!
Yes, their big Kickstarter just ended, the War Stories. So if you're interested in that, too late, but check it out. Keep an eye on their website because I'm sure they'll have some for sale soon.
Those of us who missed it.
Yeah, good stuff. But anyway, they have all kinds of other fantastic games. The War Stories was not their first rodeo. Oh, no. In fact, very recently, they just got to publish The New Science. Craig, have you seen this game?
I have seen this game.
It's great because you get to play scientific luminaries.
Indeed, luminaries.
Luminaries.
Often get to use the word luminaries in gaming.
You do not. You do not. And it's a great game because you get to pick one of your favorite luminaries from science and play through them, build out their tech tree, do their discoveries. Great way to learn who these scientists are, what the kind of important and meaningful discoveries they made.
The art direction, the art design of the game is awesome with the sort of the pencil sketches of all the different characters and the artwork of the different trees and the player mats that you get. It's really cool, very fluffy, very thematic for this this time period where all of these geniuses were just working like towards the betterment of mankind.
Mm-hmm. And don't forget all of Conquistador Games. Theme is first, as Craig just mentioned there. First, all about a good thematic experience. They got great innovative mechanics, makes their games different and unique. Also, high-quality production values. And they focus on a few titles a year that are just really, really soaked, with great theme and experience. So, Jeff, definitely check out The New Science. Head over to Conquistador Games over there at cqgames.com and check out all their cool stuff.
Conquistador!
This is Total Fangirl. Regular Jane most days, total fangirl when the moment strikes. Han shot first. Starbuck is a guy. And Lestat, now there's a vampire. Hey everyone, this is Nicole, your Total Fangirl. You can follow me on Twitter at Nicole Wakeland and check out my blog, TotalFangirl.com. This week's shout out, 8x8 Krakens, 2x2 giant skeletons, and more to come. For pre-painted and unpainted minis, check out the Dungeon Crawler Miniatures Kickstarter. This weekend we had my youngest's birthday party. It was a surprise party. She turned 9. We held the party 2 months after her birthday because I figured, hey, that'll surprise her if she finally gets it 2 months later. And it went great. One of the things we decided to do was to play some games. My job is to make sure that kids show up. There's cake, there's goodies, there's balloons. Russ's job is to make sure that the kids actually have something to do. And he is rather good at being the master of ceremonies for a bunch of 9 and 10-year-olds. So he picked some games, not really knowing all these kids, and kind of just crossed his fingers and hoped that, yeah, he guessed right, they'd be games that the kids would like. And he did pretty well. He picked a couple of classics that aren't even really board games. They're just the kind of things you can play whenever. They did Limbo. They did Freeze Dance. I mean, anything that gets kids to run and jump and goof around, that always is a big hit. But they also played a game that we weren't sure about. And the kids loved it and just wanted to play it over and over. And I thought this was kind of amazing. They played Werewolf or Werewolves of Miller's Hollow, depending on what you call it. Now, he toned it down a bit, but the kids had so much fun trying to rat each other out and figure out who was the werewolf. They wanted to play this game more than they wanted to play any other game that we played. And it went really well. We had a couple different werewolves. We had werewolves get figured out right from the beginning. It was a lot of fun for the kids. And the interesting thing to me was that it's still very simple. You know, all they've got is a card in their hand. That's it. There's not a board. There's not a lot of pieces. It's a card and their imagination. And that's what made it fun, is they're all looking at each other. You're looking kind of wolfy. You're looking at me sideways. I think it's you. It was really fun to see these kids doing this. And at the end, I think we had 3 or 4 different werewolves that got picked throughout it. The kids enjoyed it and they really enjoyed themselves. But more than that, even I think Russ enjoyed being in charge of the whole thing. And we also learned something as we were playing through. These are different kids from different backgrounds and different families, and everybody's different. This isn't, a group that we normally hang out with. These are kids that my daughter primarily knows from school. And something we didn't expect was that not everybody was a good sport overall when they lost. And sportsmanship is something that comes into every tournament that adults play. You know, if you're the guy who flips the table, you are probably not going to be thought of as a good sport. And no one wants to play that guy. And I don't think anybody really wants to be that guy either. And you all try hard not to. And every now and then, every gamer loses their temper, their cool, their patience. And we probably are like that. But I think by and large, everyone tries not to be. Well, it was interesting that this is the first time I've ever really seen it happen with a kid. When you have games that you're playing, not everyone's going to win. Not everyone's going to come in first. And in fact, sometimes depending on the game you're playing, you're the first one out. And when this happened, most of the kids were really good and they would, cheer everybody else on and goof and you pretend like, oh gosh, it's the worst thing ever. I'm the first person out and it's a horrible thing. But they were having fun with it. They understood the idea is, you play games, there's winners, there's losers, and sometimes you're going to be both. So, they were all okay with it. We did have a child who wasn't so good with the whole losing thing, and so not good with the losing thing that this particular kid kind of, pulled back a little bit and didn't say a lot. You could see that this person was upset and that they weren't real happy with how things were going on. And of course, as the parent, I felt really bad. I don't want anyone leaving the birthday party, sad and blue, even though nothing really happened to this child that didn't happen to every other. Everybody won and lost throughout the course of the day, but this one didn't take kindly to the fact that when all was said and done, they weren't first, because throughout the party, Russ handed out little gold coins, depending on how you did on different games. You got 3 coins for first, 2 for second, 1 for third. And then he had prizes at the end, and the kids who had the most coins got to pick from the prizes first. It was themed to Minecraft. So there's, a giant foam pickaxe and a sword, and there were stickers and all sorts of cool little Minecraft things. And of course, the coolest stuff got taken by the kids that were first in the game. This child wasn't even last, actually. This child was not the last person in the entire bunch, but was so disappointed that they didn't get first and that they couldn't pick the coolest thing in the stack or what they thought was coolest. They decided they didn't want to take anything. Nope, I don't want anything. I don't want any of it. That was the thing that I wanted. I wanted that pickaxe. I don't want any of it. I was a little taken aback and kind of didn't know what to do, because if my own child did that, I'd be saying, all right then, you're being a poor sport. You don't get to play, you don't get a prize, and I don't ever want to see you do that again. But how do you handle that when it's not your kid, when it's someone else's kid, and you have that pressure to make everything good and to make everything right and for everyone to have a good time? Well, how we solved it, and I don't even know if I solved it right, was our kids played, my two daughters, and I had said to one of my kids, if you're willing to trade what you have to this child who is very unhappy, we will get you something else because I know you deserve that, but it would send one of your guests home from your party happy. And at first the reaction was, well, I don't want to do that. And then this other child looked so very sad that she said, okay, fine. I don't want anyone to leave my party not happy, so I'll offer this to that person. And she did. And the child was happy, and the child was thankful, and the child appreciated it and was smiley and left the party happy and in a good mood. And I had such mixed emotions. I didn't know what to do, because the mom in me looking at it and seeing my own child would say, no way are you getting away from that. Sportsmanship is all about taking the knocks when they happen. When the other guy trounces you, you still say good job and shake his hand. And that's how we've taught our kids to play games. But this child, then I thought, well, maybe they don't play games a lot. Maybe no one's ever really taught them the value of sportsmanship. And so I did something I would never do for my own kids. And yes, child went home happy, but I was totally conflicted now I've kind of given him what he wanted. He got what he wanted as if he played well, and he didn't. But I decided in this case, it wasn't my job to be a parent to him. It was my job to make sure he had a good time. And that's what I was trying to do. Make sure that in the end, this child had a good time. But as the day went on, I thought about it. And here was my takeaway. If you've got kids, and no matter what kind of game your kids play, and no matter how old they are, make sure that they know as soon as you're able to teach them what it means to be a good sport, what sportsmanship is all about. That when you play a game, it's not all about winning. Sometimes it is just about playing and having fun and enjoying the company of the people you're with, so that somewhere down the line, your kids aren't a bad sport, and don't put the host of some party on the spot to try to make it all better and to maybe not, I don't know if I did, do the right thing.
Oh, that sound means our friend Vic the Viking is beating a path to your door, and he's been doing it from the War Store since 1999, and that is, of course, a decade and more.
Considerably more at this point.
It's getting silly now. It's fantastic, though. They have the best prices on the net. They have fantastic service. They have everything you need to get there. You know, I'm thinking to myself, I really would like to get, some of the new Mantic stuff or some of the new dystopian stuff. It's all there.
Bolt action stuff.
Or the bolt action stuff, right. I mean, the War Store has it all. They have all the bits, all the components, everything. If you're a miniature gamer, they have it all.
You know what they have, actually, that's super exciting, is whether or not you jumped in on Drop Zone Commander like our friend Will did.
Oh, yes.
One thing, their newest thing, and we actually saw this in action at TempleCon, Russ, whether we realized it or not. Mm-hmm. They have an entire table full of card stock building terrain.
Cityscape. Oh, yeah.
Cityscape. 4x4 or 4x6. So an entire 4x6 foot table of 6mm terrain, which theoretically, coincidentally, is ideal for Epic 40K, among many other games, for a crazy, crazy price. I mean, crazy price. This is beautiful cardstock terrain. That's just one example of the amazing stuff that the War Store, through their connections and through all their extra hard work, can offer to you.
I know there's no hotness too hot for the War Store. Like the War Machine dice coming in April, they got it right there on the front page. You can order it now. All those new War Machine dice from the Q Workshop folks that look awesomely awesome.
You go wrong with Q Workshop.
You really can't. So head on over to thewarstore.com. Check out all the hotness. Say hi to Vic for us. He's a great guy. You know.
This is the Dice Tower Network at dicetowernetwork.com.
Oh, our friends at Game Salute.
Indeed.
You just feel the pride of awesome gaming goodness coming at you from all the folks at Game Salute. Yeah, they just got the huge license for The Princess Bride. They're working on some great games there.
We just see all the different games that come piling out of that license.
And the great thing is Game Salute they just make sure that great publications happen from a lot of different small publishers and developers through their whole Powered by Game Salute program. So if you're looking to get a game published, or if you know someone who's trying to get a game published, make sure you go over to gamesalute.com and check it out and reach out to them. They will check your game. They'll vet your game. I've seen how they play test their games. They get literally a group of experts, people who are hardcore gamers, sit there, they play your game through, they look at it, then they evaluate it, and they don't just say yay or nay. They give you constructive feedback as to why your game could or could not be a good publication. And even if they're saying no, they don't always say no. They'll say, well, maybe, but here's some of the things you want to improve. You can do these things, fill these holes.
Like Ross when he GMs.
Exactly right. It's never no. It's just always, here's what you need to do to make it better. You come back to us with this improved, we can make this happen for you. So just fantastic stuff.
It's pretty crazy considering that when we started this podcast, if somebody said, hey, I've got a game, what do I do? All we could do is go hope and pray.
Right.
And now we can say, hey, get in touch with Dan. He will help you out.
And there's a path for it. And let's say, they'll publish it for you. Let's say you want to kickstart your game. They'll make sure you don't mess up. A lot of folks who do Kickstarters, they end up making, it seems like they get a lot of money in, but they don't realize the cost of production, the cost of shipping, the cost of just everything involved with creating something and getting it to people. There's really a lot of expenses there. People just don't understand. Like shipping from the manufacturer in China to the United States, like 10 to 20 grand just to ship the pallet over. Right. So and you can really underestimate that and actually lose money even though you had a quote-unquote successful Kickstarter. They will help you avoid all those pitfalls, make sure you have a great experience and that you have a professional experience. So if your first game is a great success, you'll be ready to do another one and people will be happy with your work.
Yep, it is a hand to hold through the entire process. And these guys have really perfected multiple avenues of publishing. Indeed. So they can help you with what you think is best for what you want to do and give you advice all along the way. It is a great resource for people who have a game that they want to see hit reality.
And that's our friends at Gamesalute.com.
No one could have believed, in the first years of the 21st century, that gaming podcasts would spread across the planet like a strange red Martian weed. Striding among them, like a huge alien tripod, walked the D6 generation. The astronomer Ogilvy assured me that the chances of anything good coming out of New Hampshire were 1,000,000 to 1. But still, they came. The D6 generation. The greatest gaming podcast on this or any other planet. And the only one to feature words from Wales. I looked up, straight into the eyes of my beloved Carrie.
Well, welcome back. Now we're very excited to talk about, a hit in our family for sure, Mice and Mystics from our friends at Plaid Hat Games. Now, Eric, have you had a chance to play this game?
I have played all the way through the book 1 as well as the Lost.
Oh, very nice. So you
and Mystican.
You are very mystical, and you are way ahead of me. I played like maybe 3 of the scenarios. My kids keep wanting to play them over and over again, so I haven't.
Okay.
I can't seem to advance through the entire plot, but but let's talk about it. I'm curious to hear your thought on the mission variety through the entire thing. So that's great. So as we want to do, let's give you a quick overview of this game. So. Came out last year near the end of... Well, it was the end of last year, or was it Gen Con? I can't remember, Eric, when it came out exactly.
Well, they were showing it at Gen Con. I don't think that they were shipping it quite yet at that point.
I feel like it was like November, December-ish, anyway.
Like that, yeah.
Our friends at Planet Games, and it is basically it's a 1 to 4 player game, but there's a couple scenarios where you could play 6, right? Where all the mice.
It's kind of weird to plan around that. There are some scenarios that have all 6 mice in them, but it would be kind of weird if you had 6 players. I guess if you had 6 players, you could always play one of those scenarios.
Right, just knock it off. And basically, what's interesting about this game is it's always the scenarios are always designed to have a certain number of heroes in them. So basically, it's a co-op, a dungeon crawler, and the big hook here is that you're playing mice as opposed to humans. So it's kind of that red wall / mouse guard / secretive nim situation here where you got your humans that are like mice. But what's interesting is each scenario has a fixed number of heroes that are going to be played. So if your player count is lower than the number of mice, people are just going to double up, and some folks are going to play 2 mice. Estimated playtime is 60 to 90 minutes. Eric, did you find that to be accurate?
I find it to be closer to 2 hours per chapter.
Yeah.
And I was still playing at a pretty good clip once my son and I got the rules down. So I would say it's closer to 90 to 120.
Nice. And the suggested retail price is $74.95, Craig, right?
Yeah.
And it is we'll decide in a second when we talk about the components whether or not that's a fair price. And what's really interesting about this game is the amount of just the amount of story involved in this box, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot going on there. Eric, you still with us?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, good. Okay. I heard a little noise. I wasn't sure what happened there. So what's in the box? Well, in this box, you're going to get 8 of these double-sided room tiles, which is basically, like all the other dungeon crawlers, you got these big square tiles, and they're kind of innovative because they're double-sided, but they're not double-sided in like Descent, where one side is outside and one side is inside, or one side is just a different room. They're double-sided in that oftentimes they will flip over, and that represents traveling through the floor or through the ceiling of the room. So you could maybe climb down a ladder and flip it over, and now you're in the basement below the room you were in, or maybe climb, jump down a drain or throw a rope and climb through a hole in the floor, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah.
What do you guys think about the art style on these tiles?
It's cool. It reminds me of a children's book, not in a bad way, in a way that really meshes with the art direction of the whole game. It's a lot of really neat detail. It works very well with. It tells you what you need to know from a game mechanics perspective, but at the same time, it presents it in a really cool sort of illustrated children's book sort of way, I thought.
Yeah, over the past several games from Plaid Hat Games, we've sort of seen a general, I guess what I think of as a Plaid Hat Games style. They use some of the same artists. I think John Ariosa is the guy's name.
Yes. Yeah.
And I haven't been a huge fan of that look in Dungeon Run and Summoner Wars. It works, but it's not really my style. But here it seems to really come together. I think it really matches the feel of a storybook. And I like it for what this game needs. Exactly.
And I mentioned earlier in the episode, I'm sucked in by aesthetics and bling. And what I like about the graphic design of this board in particular is it looks great, but also it's not a great artwork covered with a grid, but instead the spaces are all indicated by artwork. So each space for example, in a dungeon is actually, oddly shaped tiles or, stones on the floor, or in a room, it's the tiles themselves on the kitchen floor that make the spaces. So kind of like Zombicide did that with the crosswalks being the space dividers. This game also does it with art that actually divides the section. So it gives you that really nice look and not having to have that take you out of the game sort of grid pasted over the top of the art, which I really like.
It does offer a couple of weird judgment calls because of the way some of the squares are laid out, and you have to say, well, is this adjacent to this? I don't know. But they came up with this rule that if the mouse can cross from one space to another, and their base can cross from one space to another, it counts as adjacent.
Yeah, I thought that was a very clever way to handle that.
Makes everything, if there's ever a question, you go, all right, well, let's try and move the mouse from here to here. Yes, that's one move. He can step there.
So you got these great tiles. Then you also get this storyboard clock sort of tile set, 2 tiles that plop together. And this is sort of the sideboard that manages all the game, and more about that in a little bit. You get these 2 that I think really are very, very beautiful books. One of them is, they're booklets. They're not, bound, but there's 2 great staple booklets. One of them is a 55-page storybook, they call it, which is really the scenarios, much like Descent. You got your chapters, which are each of the scenarios, and a lot of story with these. Actually quite a bit to read if you want to get the full background. And then a smaller but also equally graphically interesting, I think, 19-page rule book. Eric, did you have any problem digesting all this stuff, or was it easy to follow the rules and that kind of thing?
What you need to do when you first start playing is you're looking at the main rule book to learn the basic mechanisms. And then you're looking at Chapter 1, which has special rules for that particular scenario. And each scenario you play is going to have special rules. Yeah, it's pretty easy to digest. I do find that some of the statuses I need to go back and check pretty constantly. Your mice can get stunned or webbed, and some of the things that might not happen for several chapters, you have to go back and refer to the rulebook. But it's pretty well laid out, and I believe there is an index that can clear things up.
Yes, two of my favorite things. They have a table of contents and an index, and also right in the front they have a little logo that says, "Hey, wait, if you're learning this, go to our website and watch the video made by the fine folks that Watch It Played." And our friend Rodney up there made a great video for Planet. So it's another way to learn the game without having to really try to digest all the rules also, which is very handy. Now, the game also comes with some nice, as is becoming sort of the standard now, D6s, but they're special D6s that have custom icons on them. We'll talk about that when we get to combat. Also, character cards. So every player is going to have every mouse, actually, because there might be more mice than there are players. Every hero in the game's got a little character card for tracking what's going on. And Craig, can you describe what the character cards look like?
The character cards are going to have each character has a class, and the classes are kind of cool little. It's not like fighter, cleric, blah blah blah. It's a healer, a mystic, tinkerer. What's the blacksmith?
The big tinkerer, the blacksmith. Yeah,
he's tinkerer. What's the thief?
Scamp.
Scamp. Yep. See, there you go. And then it's going to have how many wounds you can take +1 and you're done and you're captured because you don't die. Because it's a children's, story. And it's got your little special ability on it. Mm-hmm. So every model has, every character has at least, do they all have one, or is there, the one I played had one special ability?
They all have sort of a core ability on their character card, and then you're also going to be able to pick abilities from a deck to add more powers to your mouse.
Right, yes, absolutely. Yep. And it's got your stats on it, too.
And there's a little stat block, which basically your combat abilities, sort of your wisdom for when you use that, and then a speed,
defense,
and a defense, right? Yeah. And nice artwork as well. They look very nice.
Yep. And story on the back.
Oh, that's right. And there's story on the back, little background for each character in the back. Yeah,
I did not know
there's tons. There's everywhere you can look in this game. There is just. It's like a 3-page intro, I think, in the storybook for the setup of the initial campaign, and then
the whole thing.
Yeah, I made Craig read the whole thing. It took like 20 minutes.
I thought it was like a 3-paragraph little thing in the beginning, and I flipped the page. I'm like, oh, come on. And then he got mad at me when I wasn't going to read it.
I know. It's part of the game. It's a storytelling game.
It was a whole scene. Really. It's just unacceptable.
Right. You also get 2 encounter decks, a sort of a normal difficulty counter deck and a hard difficulty encounter deck. And I chose, when I was showing this game to Angelo and Craig for the first time, I figured we're all veteran gamers, so we're going to go right to the hard encounter deck. That may have been a mistake.
No.
Things did not go well.
We did not make it. We just got past the cat, Eric, and then that was pretty much the end of that. Then you got an ability deck, and this is pretty cool. It's a deck of cards for all these different abilities. More about those in a little bit. You get your initiative cards. This is neat also. This part reminds me of Dungeons & Dragons. There's a card for each monster group in the game, as well as each hero, and these will be used to track a little list of who's going to go in what order, kind of like when you're playing a role-playing game and you track your initiative order for everybody involved. It's got that very same feeling in this game, which is fun. You're going to have a ton of tokens, and they're all very beautiful. And you're going to get a bunch of pre-assembled models, and they also look very nice. And I'd say these are up here with Fantasy Flight Games quality models. You get 6 heroes, and you get 16 minions. What do you guys think of the model quality? I'm kind of throwing it to both of you.
Great. I don't have a whole lot of experience in model quality. I don't really do a whole lot of evaluation there, but they look gorgeous and very, very well detailed. I had one fall apart on me, but it was easily glued back together.
Craig, what'd you think as a miniature gamer?
I thought the characters were really cool, and the rat bad guys are cool, and I thought the bugs, I don't know how much cooler you could make a bug. They looked they seemed a little uninspired to me. Like there could have been, it seemed a little more detail in some of the bugs, but they were great for what they are.
Yeah, I agree. I thought they looked great. I like the centipede in particular. I thought it looked cool. So that's what comes in the box. What do you guys think about the value? So $75 for everything we just described. Eric, do you think you got a good value for that price?
I mean, it's a heavy box. There's a lot in there, and it's how many tiles? Eight full tiles, but they're double-sided. They get put together in all sorts of different ways. You can play this with random setups. There's lots of plastic. There's lots of tokens. I think the only thing I would have wanted in that box was maybe another couple of dice.
Yes.
There are a couple of situations where you're rolling more than 5 of them, and you have to sort of roll some and keep track and roll again.
Yep.
Or just to have more to pass around the table. But other than that, I think there's... and some more cheese.
Yes, more cheese tokens. Yep.
Yeah. We never ran out, but we were only on the first chapter, and it looked like we could conceivably run out a couple times.
What would you think, Craig, for the value in the box?
$75. That's a lot. I thought what it has is great. I didn't think there wasn't a thing in there that I thought was below standard as far as the quality goes. I think was there a lot that we didn't see, like a lot of tokens that come in later in the game and things like that?
I think the thing to remember about it, because I think it's a fair value. You're getting 24, I think, highly detailed models, but also there's art on every card. Every single item has unique art on it.
Really nice, heavy stock.
Yeah, and the quality's there, and I think the replay value is there. I think that's a fair price for what you're getting. There are games that give you a few more models, but I don't know that they give you as much artwork. Like a lot.
Story there too.
Yeah, and a lot of story, a lot of writing goes in there. That's not cheap. So I think it's pretty fair, and a lot of replay value. I mean, I don't know how many hours have you put in this game so far, Eric, in terms of with you and your family.
Well, we've gone through the full 11 chapters, and if that's 2 hours each, so that's 22 hours of successful missions. And we lost the first few a couple of times, so it's got to be probably at least 30 hours of time that we spent on this.
And let me ask you this: since you've played it through to the end, are you guys sort of like, "Oh, we've done it, we're done," or do you feel compelled to try it some more?
Well, I've wanted to take a break just because we've been playing it constantly, and I wanted to show him some other games.
Right.
But my son, when he was done, in fact, every time we played, he would want to continue playing with the pieces. He would do another adventure on the same map and reset it while I made dinner or something.
Nice. So endless value for kids, but kids are like that. Once they get something in their head, they just do it over and over again until they...
But I think there is value after going through the whole scenario. There are several of these chapters that have multiple paths to victory. And if you do something in one chapter, it may make it easier to do something in a later chapter. It may be easier, or you may not have to do a side quest later on. But in some of these, you could take a different path to complete the mission. And I would like to go back and play through the missions, maybe taking the more difficult path, maybe waiting to do one of these missions, maybe trying to build the mouse catapult, which we sort of skipped every time we played through. So there is a lot. And every time you play, you're going to be having different abilities, and you're going to discover different items. Right. It is not the sort of thing that you play through once and you're done. Yeah, the plot is going to be the same, but the way you go about it, there's a lot of variation there.
Great. Well, that's good to know. I do think there's a lot going on here, too, and I think there's a lot of replay value. So let's talk about how you play this game. So first, you got to set it up. So the first thing you're going to do is pick which they call them chapters, or the scenario you're going to play, which chapter you're going to play. And you just pick it. If you're starting from the very beginning, pick the first one, but you can pick any one. There is a campaign mode, but also you can just pick a scenario and play it.
Right.
Each chapter is going to tell you which mice are available to play. There is actually a story going on here. If you're playing in campaign mode, only certain mice are available at certain times because you're discovering them and rescuing them. There's a whole story going on. So it's going to tell you these are the 4 or 5 mice you can choose from, and then it'll say you must pick 4 of these 5 mice or whatever. So you choose your mice. You got to play with the mice they tell you, as I mentioned earlier. So if you've only got 3 players, there's 4 mice. It's balanced for 4. It doesn't scale like Descent. So you need to play all your mice. But what's great is you can have someone jump in. We had someone start watching our game and would say, "Hey, why don't you jump in and play one of these mice and just have some fun?"
Yeah.
Also, when you're setting up, so after you pick your mouse, each player is going to choose one ability. And there's quite a large deck of abilities, which goes back to Eric's point of replayability, because I think which ability you choose is going to dictate a lot of strategy. So you could change these up and really have a different game, I think. So you're going to go through, and the abilities are going to be restricted to certain classes, as Craig mentioned. So the scamp has some abilities, the people that are leaders have some abilities, and so you're going to pick an ability that's appropriate for your hero. And this is your like the superpower, basically. You're also going to get some starting equipment, and the hero card lists their starting equipment. Maybe you're going to start with a sword, some leather armor, maybe a thimble helmet. Actually, I think the thimble helmets are always found. But anyway, you're going to start with some stuff. And you're going to lay the board out based on the picture in the chapter book. So it's going to show you a little picture, lay these tiles out in a certain way, and you're pretty much ready to start with that. And then you're just going to place your figures on the starting tile as described in the very beginning of the chapter. You're going to determine initiative order now. This part I like. I think this is pretty innovative. It's kind of like D&D. You're going to take this card. So there's a card for every hero, and there's little initiative cards. And you're also going to put a card in there for each sort of type of minion that's involved. So in the very first scenario, for example, in the very first tile, there's the 4 heroes and there's 3 rat warriors. So you're going to take the rat warrior card, shuffle it in with one card for each hero, and you're going to deal them out top to bottom along this little initiative track that is on the right-hand side of this sort of clock sideboard, right? And that's going to dictate the order of play, the order each thing's going to activate, each hero, and then, of course, maybe a monster goes, and the heroes keep going until the whole initiative track's been played out. And so you set up that storyboard, as I mentioned, the initiative track. You're also going to put on the other side of that big storyboard with a clock on it. There's a left-hand side that lists a bunch of pages from page 1 to, 12 pages. And 9 pages, thank you, Eric. And in the book there, it's going to tell you that you're going to put the end token, the end game token, on a particular page. So this is going to be the timer of the game. And as things happen in the game, this little hourglass token is going to move from page 1 up to page 2 and then to page 3. And if it ever gets to the end of game token, then the game is going to be over and you're going to lose in most cases, right?
Right.
So that's your timer. You got to watch that. And the other thing about that progressing along there is not only is it a timer, but as encounters happen in the game, the page you're on in the chapter, the quote-unquote page you're on, is going to dictate the types of monsters that show up. So as the game gets longer or deeper and the timer goes deeper, the things you're going to fight get tougher. What advances this time, we're going to talk about it later, is not purely based on time. There's activities going to happen that are going to advance this timer on you and you're not ready for it. And so you're kind of racing against this clock the entire time.
Yeah, and it means that if you have a really bad first couple of rooms, things get very, very difficult for you as you go through the rest of a scenario. But if you have some good rooms, then things are a whole lot easier in the second half. It can develop in very different ways based on how those first couple of rooms go.
That's right. And the last thing you're going to do before you start is watch for chapter-specific rules. So there are many cases where it'll say, like, hey, if you search this corner of the room, you get a specific treasure, or there's this effect in effect for this room, so watch for those as well. And once you've got that all done, you're ready to start. So setup is pretty quick. Now, when we get ready to play here, we want to talk about what the goals are. So your goal here is there's a different objective in every chapter. Usually it's run off the end, but are there some more in-depth objectives sometimes, Eric?
Yeah, sure. There's some rescue missions. You need to rescue a character. Sometimes you need to get to a specific point and defend for a certain amount of time until everybody can get to a specific point. Yeah, usually it's wipe out all the enemies in the final room in the sequence, but it might be finding an item. There's lots of different. There's a good variety of missions.
It keeps it interesting, and what you're basically trying to do is achieve that before the primary way the game ends and you lose is if that little hourglass gets to the end case. But some missions do have other end conditions that you will lose on as well. So you got to kind of watch for those also. But basically, achieve the objective before you run out of time. That's pretty much the goal. And each turn, it's going to be pretty simple. You're going to look at that initiative track that you dealt those initiative cards into, and you're going to start at the top and work your way down the track. And you're going to activate whosever turn it is and just keep going. So when you first get to the first guy on the track, let's say it's a hero. So when a hero turn goes, you basically get 2 things your hero can do. Well, 3, technically. You can move, then take an action, or you can take an action, then move. And moving is pretty simple. Craig, how does movement work in the game?
Well, you have a speed, which is your little mouse foot icon on your card, and then you roll one of the dice, and the dice are great multi-use dice, and one of the uses is they've got a number in the upper left-hand corner, and you add that number to your move, and that's how many spaces you can move. So you're always guaranteed a minimum of whatever your movement is plus whatever you roll on the dice, and you could just move just like Dungeon Command, really. So it's a grid, and you're moving. You can move diagonally. You can move, to any adjacent square as you're moving.
Right, and as Eric mentioned earlier, as long as your base can span the gap, because it's not a perfect grid, these sort of this artistic license they're doing with the spaces. So as long as your base can span the gap, that's a one-step move. And you can move pretty much wherever you want to go. There is a couple restrictions. We'll talk about terrain types later, but one of the things you got to watch out for is if there is an enemy in your square, you cannot leave unless there's an equal number of mice there when you leave of enemies. So as long as there's someone else there, you can basically sort of say, you hold them off and I'll run away, and maybe you can run away with a healer and leave your warrior there fighting the guy. But you can't just walk away from a bad guy unless someone else is supporting you.
Right.
So that's movement. Then you're going to take some kind of action, and there are several different actions. One of them, and Craig, I think I forgot to bring this up when we played, but
yeah, I don't recognize this.
One action is scurry.
I always forget this too.
And scurry is basically a bonus move. So if you really got to get somewhere quickly, you can give up because the most common action is probably your battle action to attack. But you can give up that action and scurry and basically move twice in a turn. So if you're really trying to get somewhere quickly, that's an option. Your other option is battle, which is basically do an attack. We'll talk about combat in a little bit. You can also search. So basically, if you're somewhere and you got nothing better to do, you can search and you just take a card from the search pile. Usually they're good. It's a piece of equipment, some kind of little boon. But sometimes they're not so good. And so it's not always a great deal to search. But usually, if there's nothing else to do, searching is probably not a bad idea.
And certain scenarios will require you to search for specific items. You get like a special search. So if you successfully search, because you don't always get to do that, you have to roll the die and get one of those little starburst symbols.
That's right.
Which are on 3 of the 6 sides. And if you're in a special scenario, you may be getting one of those all-important items by doing a successful search.
Right.
Now, so whenever you search, you have to roll the die and get a star, because we weren't doing that
Yeah,
either.
I may have forgot that part.
Yeah. You attempt to search.
Right.
And if you successfully...
It's always fun playing a game for the first time.
Hey, well, I should point out that I let us search all the time, which should have been an advantage, and we still lost. So
right. Oh, no, I'm not saying you're like trying to...
I should have put the difficulty on so high. That was definitely a mistake.
So you only
Make
search
it a little
one
tough.
That's right.
item for each character successfully. I mean, once a character has successfully searched in a room, they can no longer search.
Well, we may have cheated there, too.
No, I don't think we ever had the time to do multiple searches like that.
Yeah, probably not.
Because if you think about it, we only got like five or 6 items total.
Yeah, my mouse was kitted out, and then he died horribly and lost all of his stuff, which is pretty embarrassing.
He got captured. Hello.
He got pounced by a cat. One-shotted, man. He had 4 defense dice, Eric, and we'll talk about it in a second. So next, the other action you can do is recover. And basically the job of recover is to remove a condition that's ongoing, like stun. And for example, the deal with stun is you cannot take another action besides recover to get rid of it. So basically, getting stunned, you can still move, but you're going to lose your battle or scurry or whatever. And the last big action is explore, which is basically how you move from one tile to another. And we'll talk about exploring a little later. Then also you can do these free actions, which basically don't count as anything. You just sort of do them during your turn. There's 3 of them. They're pretty simple. One of them is share, which is basically trading. So as long as you're in the same space as another mouse, you can swap gear. And another thing to remember is you can swap cheese, which we forgot until halfway through the game, which would have been huge because our mystic who cast spells was having trouble rolling cheese. And if we'd gotten some cheese early, that would have been a big boon.
Yes.
Yeah.
Who moved my cheese?
Indeed. So Eric, do you find yourself trading cheese a lot?
Oh, yeah. Well,
pro
somebody's always going to be luckier than others. And plus, some of the characters have abilities that make it easier for them to collect cheese. And so they can sort of feed it to the other characters who need it. Maginos is one of the characters that needs good amounts of cheese to do his major spells. And of course, you want to make sure that the healer has a lot of cheese as well. So, yeah, a lot of cheese trading. And you can trade in the same space or adjacent spaces. So it makes it a little bit more flexible to give stuff around.
Oh, good to know. And the other thing you can do is equip, which is basically change things out. So basically what's cool is each item has a little sort of drawing of a mouse, and the parts of the mouse are highlighted based on where this item goes. So if it's a helmet, his head's highlighted. If it's a breastplate, his chest is highlighted. And 1 or 2 paws will be highlighted if it's a single-handed weapon or a dual weapon. And, of course, you can't have more items allocated to a limb than you have. So you can't have two two-handed weapons going on or anything like that. So things you're not carrying would be put face down in your little pack. Up to 3 items can be in your pack. So if you want to start switching things out, you got to do a free action to re-equip, maybe change out one of your swords for another one or something like that. And the last free action is leveling up. So if you ever get to the point where you have 6 cheese on your mouse, you can choose to trade that all in as a free action and level up. And all that basically means is you get to go through that ability deck again and pick yet another cool ability for your mouse. And these don't get lost when you go down, so it's kind of nice. You can level your mouse up and get them very powerful if you can get that much cheese. Although it's kind of tough. I don't know, Eric, did you allow a lot of leveling up? Because it's very tempting to spend that cheese and not save it for leveling.
It's very tempting. I mean, because using the cheese for your abilities is useful, and it's almost an afterthought, I think, unless you're really trying hard. Often, as we were getting close to the end of a scenario, we look around and go, okay, can we give a bunch of cheese to somebody and let them level up before we finish? Right. Make sure that we've made some progress here, because it is important to get a few of these abilities under your belt. You want each mouse to have a couple of choices to choose from if you're playing the campaign mode, because you get to keep those abilities as you progress from chapter to chapter. So it's good to make progress.
Yeah, exactly. Especially like for the healer, you want a healing spell, but you also want a cure poison spell, right? So you got to get those out early, things like that. So that's your free action. So that's what happens if a hero. So you're looking at the initiative track. It's a hero's turn. Let's say it's Tilda's turn, and Eric's playing Tilda. So Eric, go ahead and move Tilda and do your thing. So Eric does his things with Tilda, and then next on the track is maybe Colin, and Craig's playing Colin. So Craig does his thing with Colin, and then next on the track is, oh no, it's the Rat Warrior card, right? So if it's a minion, which are what they call all the monsters in the game, if it's a minion, well, that's not quite true. There's also bosses, but basically if it's a monster, we look at the card, and they're going to have some stats on them too. But first of all, when monsters move, first I should note that the minion cards, it's one card for all of that monster group. So if you've got Rat Warriors on the board, there'll be one card for all the Rat Warriors. If you have Rat Warriors and Roaches on the board, there'll be two cards, one for the Roaches and one for the Rat Warriors. And there might be different spots in the initiative track. Mm-hmm. So we get to the Rat Warriors. They're all going to move. So you're going to pick a Rat Warrior, and he's going to do his thing. And there's some very straightforward but strict rules on how you move a minion. Eric, what are the minion moving rules?
Well, they always want to move toward the closest guy. And if there's ever a choice between two of them, they're going to pick the one that is farthest up on the initiative track.
That's right. So the fastest hero is always the biggest threat. And that makes it very important. There's actually a couple hero abilities that allow Colin in particular, the leader, to move up on the initiative track and replace other people in the track. Not only does this get him going earlier, but it also makes him a bigger target than the other people. So that can be very, very handy because there's abilities that will encourage you to group up and stand on the same tile. And when you do that, then the monsters will always hit because you're all equidistant, will always attack the highest person on the initiative track. So you'll want to get your sort of tank mouse up in the initiative one spot.
Do always attack, if there's also a choice, they're going to attack the one that hasn't been attacked yet that round. Right. So if they're in front of a group of all four of you, they're only going to attack each one of you once until everybody's been attacked once, and then they'll go after the number one.
That's good to know. I don't think I was doing that right either. See, I'm learning all kinds of stuff. I'm glad you're on today, Eric. This is great.
It's important, though, knowing how those minions are going to move, because you really don't want to, say, put Tilda out in front.
Oh, yes.
And have everybody else searching or something, because she will get pounded. If you've got one person out in front and the minions have no choice but to go after her, she's in trouble.
Yeah. And what's also interesting about the minion rules is they're slightly different if they're archer minions, right? If they have range attacks, they basically won't move unless they can't see somebody, and they'll just shoot. So they'll stay at range and just pound
They
you.
also get placed as far away from you as possible when they come out on the board. Yep. So they're the harder ones to get to and knock out because they're shooting from a distance.
And it gives you that nice logical feel of the close combat mice are always up close to you, or rats, and the bad guy archer rats are away in the back, and you sort of get that feeling of like it's a planned attack against you, and you really got to crack their defenses. And basically, they'll attack in that same way, that whole initiative rule. And if there's a tie, they go by the initiative track, which Eric already mentioned. So that's how minions work. And that's pretty much it. You just go down and keep moving. And sometimes on the minion cards, watch for them. Oh, we should mention that minions move at one die roll for speed, right? So you roll the die, you look at the number, and that's how far they move.
Nice little moment of tension and drama in the game.
Yes, you're hoping the guy's only going to walk one because maybe he's 3 squares away. And you're,
Especially, let's say you're the mage and you're all by yourself, and there's a bunch of rats coming in. And,
that's bad.
Yeah, you're like, oh my god, please roll ones, and that never happens. But there's always that hope.
Right. So now let's talk about combat. So finally, the minion gets to you, or you get to the minion, and you're going to attack him. And so you got 2 ways you can attack people. Basically, there's your melee attack, and then there's your range attack, and they're pretty similar. So first thing you're going to do is, if you're either in the same space or in an adjacent space to who you're trying to attack, you can use your sword, your melee attack on them. And you're going to roll. You're going to look at your battle value, which is the number next to the sword on your character sheet, and that's how many dice you're going to roll base. Plus, any equipment you're carrying might give you bonus dice. So maybe you have a sword that's +1 die. So you roll all the dice that you're allowed based on this stat, and you're hoping to see swords. Some sides of the dice have one sword on them. Some sides have a sword and a shield. Some sides have a little bow on them for a bow and arrow. And you're hoping to see swords, either swords with shields or swords. And every sword you get is going to be a hit against your target. Now, your defender is then going to roll, right? And so there's a stat on the monsters and on your guys that have a little shield, and that's your defense dice. And then again, more equipment you're carrying will also have little shield icons with pluses on them. So if you have, let's say your base defense is 1, you're carrying a shield that's +1, so you're going to get 2 defense dice. And if you get hit by 2 swords, you're going to roll your defense dice, and you're hoping to see the shield side, the side with a shield and a sword. And each shield you roll will block one of the swords that was scored against you. And any sword you don't block will do damage to your mouse or damage to the minion, and you're going to take these little wound counters in the game, and you're going to put those on your mouse or on the bad guy model, right? Mm-hmm. And that's pretty much how melee works. Now, one more thing to watch out for, though, is you're also looking to see if you roll any cheese. So in addition to the bows and the swords and the shields, there's also a big slice of cheese on some sides of the dice. And if you get a slice of cheese, you get 1 cheese token for every cheese you roll. And you get this cheese token either if you roll an attack die or if you roll defense dice. Mm-hmm. Now, if the minions roll defense dice, though, the cheese goes to the minion cheese wheel.
Dum, dum, dum.
And that is bad. That's sort of the mini timer that drives the main timer of the game, and more about that in a minute. But that's bad, so you don't want to see that happening. But if you get cheese, that's great, because you're going to put on your hero token, and cheese is used, it's basically like mana in this game. It powers all your special abilities, and if you get 6 of them, you can level up as well. So cheese, all those special abilities you're going to draw and add to your mouse are all going to be driven by cheese. Range attacks work exactly the same as a melee attack, except when you roll them, you're looking for bows on the dice instead of swords. And because of that, range attacks are a little harder to hit with.
Yeah, I think there are 2 bows and arrows on each die. Yep. There are 3 swords.
Exactly. And so that makes it trickier. But the good news is there's no maximum range in this game because the tiles are pretty small. So basically, if you can see the guy, you can shoot him, pretty much. And models don't block line of sight, I don't believe, right, Eric? You just got to worry about the walls.
Correct.
Right. And that's pretty much it. Now, if your health ever goes to 0, so if you get... And now, Craig, this confused me. I got this wrong, and this may have made the game a little harder. This part of the game was one part that I found a little confusing, was that some of the minions have no hearts on their cards. And those guys, if they have no hearts, it means they have basically 1 health point. If you do a point of damage, they're dead. Now, other minions have 1 heart on their card. And if you do a point of damage, I thought you had to get an extra point because they had 1 heart, so you had to get 2. But really, you don't. You just need 1, right? So it's really... if they have 1 heart or no hearts, they still have 1 heart. So it's sort of strange. So basically, if you get equal to the number of hearts or greater than the hearts on the card, the guy is dead. And if he has no hearts on his card, it only takes 1 hit to kill him also.
Uh-huh. Right.
Basically, that works. So
there were cards that didn't have any hearts on them. I thought they all had 1.
The Rat Warriors have none, which confused me.
That confused.
Yeah, so that was really, I think, the only one that doesn't. So I wonder if that was a misprint. I don't know. But anyway, so once you do that, and the heroes are the same way. So if the enemy gets down to 0, you remove his little plastic model from the board, and if he's the last guy in that group, you also remove his card from the initiative track and slide everybody up. So that's how you pop him off. If the hero's hearts go all the way to equal the number of hearts they have on their sheet, then the hero is not killed, they are captured. Now, capturing is bad. First of all, you lose all but your starting equipment. And this is tough because so here's what happens. So this cat attacks me, right? Big paw comes down on this guy, and my Colin is awesome. He's rocking a coin shield. He's got a metal thimble on his head. He's wearing the leather armor. He's rolling 4 defense dice. He's awesome. So the cat comes in, and I let Craig roll for the cat because Craig's a bad die roller.
That was not a good idea.
And Craig rolls 4 swords.
Oh,
no problem. I got 4 defense dice, right? I'm fully healthy. What could possibly go wrong? I roll, ready for this, Eric? 4 bows.
Ouch.
Colin gets
killed for.
Colin gets 1-shotted, dead. Boom.
Oh, man.
Drops his thimble, drops his shield. They all fall down the grate. He's got nothing left. He's out. And it was right at the beginning of the kitchen encounter. And so now we're down our main warrior. And this is where the whole encounter, our whole adventure went pretty much to pants because now the cat's beating us all up. And now the other problem that happens is when you're captured, you lose all this stuff. Your mouse is removed from the board. And the page advance counter, remember that little hourglass in the corner? It goes up 1 page whenever a mouse goes down. That's bad news. And the mouse cannot come back until all the minions of the room are defeated. So basically, Colin is now out until the rest of the crew can defeat that cat. Trouble indeed. So it's really hard when a hero goes down, that's for sure, especially if you had a lot of good stuff. Mm-hmm. Now, let's talk a little bit about, that's all combat. That's it, pretty much. Let's talk about this cheese thing. So really... we talked about cheese already. What are some examples of some cool abilities you can spend your cheese on, Eric?
Well, we talked about healing. Tilda can spend a couple of cheese to heal a nearby mouse. You can also use, say, Maginos's Chain Lightning ability, which is one of the more expensive abilities that lets you attack 3 guys in one room and possibly hit them all. Nice. Nez has an awesome ability called Thunder Squeak, which lets him hit all of the enemies in one space with his massive hammer attack. Stuff like that. That's going to let you break some rules, attack more effectively, move around the board more effectively, and mess with the initiative track.
Yeah, Colin had a really cool one that let him switch places with a mouse higher than him on the initiative track. And not only did he do that and so get himself in a better spot to defend people and go earlier, but also when he does that, the mouse that he switched spots with immediately gets to go. So
yes.
That mouse effectively gets 2 turns, which is a really nice, and it feels like you're a leader. Like, yeah, go get him. And so it's a really neat little thing. So that's great. Now, the problem is, though, what happens when minions roll cheese? So when minions are rolling attack and defense dice, and this really gets interesting because more powerful minions are rolling more dice on defense and offense. That means there's more cheese flying around for the bad guys.
Yeah.
And when they roll cheese, you're going to take a slice of this little cheese token and you're going to put it on the top of the clock on this whole campaign tracker sideboard here. And when that, there's basically room for, what, 6 slices of cheese there, Eric?
6 slices, yeah.
Yep. So you're going to start filling in the pizza, right, with slices of cheese. And every time a minion rolls a cheese, you got to put another slice of cheese up there. And that clock doesn't get reset until it fills up, right? So if you finish a room and go to the next room, it's still sitting there at 4 cheese or whatever. So the drama, even if you get through a room without ever having the clock fill up, you're still got that drama of next room, you've only got 2 more slices of cheese. And that's what got us in trouble. We went into the kitchen with only 1 slice of cheese left on that clock. So the very first thing, when a roach attacked and got a slice of cheese, all of a sudden the cheese wheel hit full. And when that cheese wheel hits full, something called a surge happens. A couple things bad happen when this happens. First of all, the page advance counter, that little hourglass, goes up 1 more space. So 1 more closer to the end of the game. And remember also that the higher the pages, the nastier monsters you fight. Yep. Also what happens is there's surge instructions. Now, first you look in the chapter, because sometimes the chapters say, if a surge happens, the cat shows up, who's a really bad boss. Or if a surge happens, do this. But if there's not a special instruction for the chapter, there's these encounter cards, which we'll get to in a second. They also tell you what a surge happens. But very often a surge is just reinforcements, right? Like 2 more rat warriors show up, or a spider shows up, or a centipede comes out and starts fighting you, right?
That can be bad.
Oh, yes. And when that happens, you're going to take that card for that monster, put it in the bottom of the initiative track, and you're going to take the creature and spawn him on one of the icons on the board, these little rat feet icons in several squares. And you're going to spawn him. And there's different spawning rules depending on if it's a ranged creature, he's as far away as he can come. And if he's a large creature, he's as close as he can get to you guys. And now you got to deal with him. And it's a particular problem because, remember, you can't leave the room and explore until all the minions in the room are dead. So if you're getting surges, more guys are coming, and the timer for the game is running out. So you really got to kind of clear the room and get the heck out before surges start hitting and cause more trouble.
The one saving grace with the surge is that there can only be 1 surge per tile. So you may still, if you refill the minion wheel again, you're still going to go up 1 space on the chapter track, but you aren't going to get another spider or another Brody showing up.
That's good. I don't think we ever double surge, but that's good to know. But yeah, the chapter, the book advancing, that's the real problem because that's the end of the game right there. So really, in I think the starting scenario, it starts on page 8 or 7.
6.
Thank you. So basically, you have 6 surges. If you can't get through the whole scenario without 6 surges happening, you're going to lose.
Yeah.
The end marker can move. Get certain events will move that further along the track. Sort of
not enough
time.
Not enough. Yeah, not enough. But you're right, Eric. There are things like, for example, if you befriend the kitchen maid, I think it moves it up 1 for you, that kind of thing. So that's how the surge system works. So there's this nice little timer that as bad guys keep fighting you and they're rolling cheese, you're like, uh-oh. And there are ways to mitigate this. Like, for example, Filch has a special ability that when he kills a rat, he gets a piece of cheese, but he steals it from the minion cheese wheel. So he can try to use him to sort of reduce the number of the cheese wheel and things. So there's ways to fight that, but there's these 2 timers. There's sort of the fast surge timer that's going to bring more bad guys and advance the page counter. And there's also the page counter itself, which you're working against to win the game. The last big thing we haven't really talked about is exploring. So finally you fought off all the minions and you've avoided a surge, and now you've got to explore. You got to get to the next tile. So first, you got to make sure there's no minions. because traveling from tile to tile here is kind of abstracted. It's not like Descent or maybe Wrath of a Shardalon, where you just sort of one guy wanders off the edge and starts exploring while the rest of you are still fighting bad guys. You gotta clear the room.
Yep.
Okay. After the room's clear, you can move, you can explore, and there's different rules about exploring, though, right? So one of the rules is that on the edges of the tiles, some of the edges of the tiles have two different colors, either sort of a light brown or a sort of an orangey color. And these represent sort of the corridors between the tiles. But the trick is that the corridors have to be the same color to move from one tile to the other. And they have to exist on both sides. So if one side's got an orange opening, but the other side's got a black line, you can't move through that wall. And if they're both the same color, you can. But if one's orange and one's beige, you can't either. And that basically is telling you that the only way to get to the next room is to flip the tile over and go through the downstairs or the upstairs. So there's also spots on the tiles that show these little curving arrows. And that basically means if you stand in that spot, you can explore up or down, right? And go and flip the tile over and move to the next side that way. And one other thing, sometimes those icons have little requirements like a hook, meaning that to get up, you need a rope and a hook to get through the next level. So sometimes there's requirements to do that exploring. But basically, if everybody's dead, you simply explore, flip the tile over, or move to the next tile, and all the mice get picked up and moved to the first space or the indicated spot on the next tile to start.
Right.
Did I get that right?
That sounds good.
All right, awesome. And that's pretty much all there is to exploring, except that after you flip the new tile over and you get there, for some reason in dungeons, Eric, or Craig, I don't know if you notice this about dungeons either, but in dungeons, you never just go to an empty dungeon room. There's always somebody there waiting for you.
Yeah.
It's sort of a theme. And Mice and Mystics.
Lame genre if you were crawling through empty dungeons.
Right, just strolling along. So Mice and Mystics is no exception. So now there's this encounter deck. And remember I mentioned there's an easy encounter deck and a hard encounter deck. So what you're going to do is that's going to determine the kind of random monsters you get once you start leaving the first room. So you flip this thing over, and on it is a list of page numbers, like page 1 through page 9. And after each page number, it tells you the kind of monsters that are going to start there. So depending on how far your page counter is gone, the magnitude of baddies that are going to show up is going to be indicated there. And also at the bottom of the encounter card is a little surge, and it tells you what happens if a surge happens, assuming there's no special room rules for the surge. So, and based on those spawning rules that Eric mentioned earlier about, combat guys spawn closer and range guys spawn farther away, you're going to look at what's getting spawned there, and you're going to put them on the appropriate tiles. And again, there's little markers, little rat feet. You just put them on the appropriate ones. And now you're going to also, though, take the initiative cards, because it's a new room, so a new initiative. You're going to take all the initiative cards for the heroes, all the monster cards that are involved, shuffle them up, and determine a whole new initiative order for the new room.
Yep.
And that's pretty much it. And now you're ready to rinse and repeat and go battle it again and work your way through the next room.
The other thing we should probably mention talking about exploring is you can hang out in a room that you've cleared of enemies.
Oh, yes.
You can do those searches that we talked about, maybe try and find some cool items. But if there aren't any bad guys on the initiative track, every time you get through one full round of the heroes, one more piece of cheese goes on that minion wheel.
Exactly.
So you can spend as much time as you want exploring, but you might trigger a surge or get yourself very close to a surge heading into that next room. So there's always that ticking clock, even when you've cleared out the bad guys.
Oh, yeah. You definitely feel compelled to move forward. And that happened to us, actually. This is what got us involved with the cat. So we go in this room, we fight this big, massive battle, spider, rats. We get through it, and there's like one slice of cheese left. And the problem is, when we killed the spider, there was only one mouse left that could go before the end of the turn. And we realized, then the room hadn't surged yet, we realized if we did not get up that ladder right now, we would surge, and another thing would come, and nobody had the speed to get across past ladder to the next room, so we had to go upstairs. So we ran upstairs to avoid that surge, but that turned out to be a mistake, so we walked in this room, but we got surged almost immediately as soon as something rolled a cheese, and that was a bad because then the cat showed up. So the cat basically showed up when the room was still full of roaches, and it was just a bad scene.
Yeah, sometimes it's better to take the surge in an empty room and deal with it. If you know, it's much easier to deal with two rat warriors than it is to deal with Brody the cat. Really difficult to play.
We could have used that advice last night, Eric. That would have been helpful. So yeah, it was fun to see though, and it's definitely, you can tell the depth in the game. There's a lot going on, which is really great because it is a very family friendly game. You can just play along, but at the higher difficulty level, you got to really consider all these options, or you will die. It's brutal. Good stuff. So just some quick little things I want to show up because there's a lot of flavor around this. It's a pretty simple game to play, really. There's a lot of little flavor, though. One of the things I really like is how the boss card mechanics work. So the boss monsters actually have multiple initiative cards representing different attacks they can do. So like the cat has both a pounce and sort of a run or something, and they both get shuffled in there. And then So he might have two different attacks that occur at two different points in the initiative track. And when you're fighting the boss, you can sort of wound him and remove one of his abilities from the initiative track, but he's still in the game as long as you haven't knocked both of his abilities out. Right? I think there's a giant spider with like 3 different attacks and all kinds of craziness going on there.
So the end boss has 4 initiative cards.
Ooh, nice. That's
They come out. I won't spoil it because at that point it's pretty cool, but he has 4.
But I like that mechanic a lot. What'd you think of that mechanic, Eric?
I like it because there's different things to worry about. And I also like how there's a mechanism that if they come out at the bottom of the initiative track, if a boss gets added to an already full board, they actually get separated through a particular mechanism. So you aren't facing both of them one right after another. And it adds some nice variety. Which attack is more nasty at this point? Which one do we focus on to try and save us from the really nasty attacks?
Right. It gives that feeling like cut off the spider's stinger or whatever, kind of thing. Also, some really exotic equipment in the old search deck. Like one of the ones I like particularly is the grape. Yep. So you can find these grapes, and then if you can find a fork, you can basically put the grape on a fork and jump on it like a giant catapult, right?
And make mouse a pulp, yeah.
Yes, mouse a pulp, which is just awesome. There are some scenarios have mouse traps on the board, which you must avoid or get slowed down by, which is kind of neat. All kinds of crazy, cool monster rules, like the Rat Warriors have right on their initiative card that after they attack, they advance one in the initiative track and shove the person above them down one, so they sort of get faster and nastier as you go.
Yes.
Some of them call stunning. What are some examples of some cool hero abilities you saw, Craig?
You had my hero ability or hero abilities or their cards,
the hero abilities. Just pick something fun.
Mine was cool because every time I got a cheese from attacking, I got 2 cheese.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
You'd think I would have a good time finding cheese, but it still didn't have a lot of good time. And then yours was cool because you were the leader. So if you didn't get the first position on the initiative track each time, you got a piece of cheese. In addition to having the ability to, in your turn, leap to the front of the initiative track, and whoever you displaced got another turn immediately. So that was a double whammy, really good benefit to the team. Yep. So everybody seemed like they had really dynamic special abilities. The thiefy guy, what was it? What is he called again?
Filch, Scamp.
Filch, the Scamp. Whenever he kills a rat, he steals cheese. Or no, whenever he kills anything, he steals cheese.
No,
right?
He got to be a rat, but then
he can take it from the
the
wheel.
Yep.
He gets cheese. He takes it from the wheel on a rat.
Yep.
He also has sort of a third appendage. He can carry a dagger in his tail.
Oh, that's right.
There's one of his abilities that Filch can use is called a knife strike. And if you manage to find, you're only going to start with 1, maybe 2 daggers on your person at the beginning of a chapter. But if you get all 3 daggers, including some that are throwing daggers, and you use this ability, you can attack with all 3 of those weapons, which makes it pretty effective to take out some bad guys.
Oh, nice. Eric's got all the tips. I got to try that out.
He also had that cool card that allowed him to spend 2 cheese to take another action. So he could be like a mincing machine.
Oh, yeah. He's like a little whirlwind of death. I love it.
Mousy whirlwind of death.
Also, to add depth, as Eric mentioned earlier, there's all kinds of effects like stunned and webbed and all kinds of cool things you got to worry about. That just adds to the depth of the game. And there's a lot going on in this. It's really, I'm sort of surprised by how much depth there was in a game that's so sort of fun children's story theming. I was really impressed by that.
Yeah, and each chapter has a different layout, different focuses. There's certain pieces of art that won't mean anything for most chapters that you have them in, but then in one particular scenario, you have to get to that specific point where there's a mirror on a table, and that's the vastly important element to this particular chapter. And so it's neat to be reusing these same rooms, these same tiles, and rearranging them in different ways to create a castle that really feels like it has a layout and a geography, and an upstairs and a downstairs. It's really a fascinating system.
Yeah, I really like the double things. One other thing we should mention, too, before we get to our final thoughts here and wrap it up, is that some of the fun things that Plaid Hat did to really support this game and sort of take it to the next level. First of all, we mentioned already, they got the Watch It Played guys, Rodney, to do a great instructional video. Also, there's already a bonus scenario, right, Eric, for like 99 cents on their website?
99 cents, they call it a lost chapter. It's sort of a spooky story, adds another player piece called Crumbles, like a baby mouse that you have to protect. It's an escort mission.
Nice.
It's fun, and for $1, it's well worth a look.
Nice. And then also they do have, you can buy more dice, kind of like Descent dice. You can buy for $6, you can get another pack of dice. And we noticed the same thing you did, Eric, that it definitely, like Descent, you really want to have a pack of dice for at least 2 packs for the players, because it just feels like you're constantly trading dice back and forth.
The dice have been out of stock for a while. I should have when I had the chance.
Yeah, at least I see Colby at a con.
We kept having to pass them around.
Yeah.
It was nice to have extra dice for a game that has custom dice.
And this is sort of a neat thing they did. I thought this was really fascinating. They got the actor Rich Sommer, right, who is well known on Mad Men, and he's a self-professed gamer. Craig, I don't know if you knew this.
I did not know that he was a self-professed gamer.
Yes, he is. And they got him to read all 53 of the story bits that are found in the book. And for I believe it's like about $10, $9.95. I think you can get the MP3s for this.
Yep.
And then play it to yourself or your kids or whatever of the story. And what's great about this is all the proceeds go to the Jack Vassell Memorial Fund, which I thought was really nice.
Indeed. I mean, this is a storytelling game, and I like reading the stories in each section of the game. You'll get through a certain action sequence, and then it says, now read this aloud to everyone. And I enjoy that element, but if you don't, if you're not really excited about doing that when you play this game, you can just play Rich's segment and donate money to a good cause at the same time.
Yeah, it's great. So that was really nice too. So a lot of nice support over there in Plaid Hat. It's definitely, they're behind it, and I would not be surprised to see a expansion for this in the not too different future, because I think it's doing very well for them. So
definitely in the works. It's sold out of, I believe, its 3rd printing, and they are working on a new one which they doubled. They've sold 15,000 copies of this.
Wow!
Very nice.
That's great.
And an expansion is on the way pretty soon. I think we should see it probably by the end of the year.
Nice. Well, that's awesome. So let's wrap up and give our final thoughts here on this great game. Now, we got to rate it using the patent-pending D6G rating system. So Eric, I don't know if you're familiar with that. So what we'll do here is, for our listeners who are new, Craig, we're going to need you to describe the patent-pending D6G rating system.
Right.
And if you could do that in the style of a mouse being chased by a cat while trying to avoid being hit by a broom. Please describe the patent-pending D6G rating system.
Okay, well, basically, it's basically a number system where we're just going to give it a number. The higher the number, the worse the rating, and the lower the number, the better the rating. So it's just going to be, think of it as a number of stars, and only it's reversed. So like a 6 is really bad, and 2 is really, really good. Good. And we're basically pretending you're rolling a die, and the likelihood of that die roll indicating whether or not you're average gamer gamer would enjoy the game. So low number, high number.
Nice. We lost our mouse. So Eric, I don't know if you followed the rating system there, but would you want to give your final thoughts up first here on what you think of Mouse Guard as a whole? Or Mouse Guard, Mice and Mystics, not the role playing game.
You give it first, so he can follow along and get an idea of what.
We'll save the best for last. We'll save Eric for last. How's
there
that?
You go.
Oh, great. No pressure.
No pressure. All right. So I just like how this game looks. I think it's very enchanting. It's just the art style really nails what they're going for here. It's very Redwall feeling. If you ever watched the Redwall animated series from the 90s, they do that sort of that woodblock art style, that the old style between the episodes, and this has got that sort of same style on the cover, and they did sort of the same thing, and it's that very. So if anybody knows a fan of Redwall, you will just fall in love with this game, and the components I think match it. It just really looks nice on the table. Great. What really surprised me the most about it is how great of a family game it is, but also how great of a gamer game it is. I mean, we got, the hard mode, we really got beat, and we did a few things wrong, but some of them were in our favor, so I'm not sure that didn't balance out. I love the cheese wheel timer mechanic. I think 2 things are really innovative in this game. One of them is the double-sided tiles being a way to transverse vertically in the game, which I thought was really, really clever, and it definitely feels that way. Right from the very beginning scenario, you're literally climbing down a little drain and flipping it over. Now you're in a store in flowing water, trying to get out of the water. And a little nods to all kinds of cool mechanics, like getting out of the water, you got to roll a star, which is a 1 in 3 chance. But if you're getting out of the water into a space where there's other mice, you get to roll more dice because they're helping you get out of the water. Little things like that just really add to the charm and the feeling of a role playing game. The cheese timer wheel's perfect. Really makes you think about keep moving forward, and you really wince. Even when you kill a bad guy, to watch him roll cheese as he goes down, it's like, oh no, they're getting closer. Like the bosses, that mechanic's also innovative with the multiple initiative items on the track, really smart. My only complaint is the lack of the heart marker on some of the minions, so that I get confused between no hearts and one heart. So I ended up ruling that you had to have more. It was a very bizarre me moment, but anyway. And don't forget to trade your cheese. I think that's the biggest recommendation I can make.
Either, because we had to do one more wound to everything we fought.
Yes. But we also took it on our side too. We didn't go down unless we were one higher also. So
I was walking around with 3 wounds for a very long time.
Yes, so we kind of cheated both ways. So I guess that works out.
Okay, good point.
But be sure you trade your cheese. I think we forgot to do this in the beginning, and I think, Craig, you would have been much more effective in particular early on, because without cheese, the Magus is
the way I was rolling.
is not so hot. Also, we didn't mention this earlier, but I love the achievement system. So they have these achievements in the game, and there's 2 kinds of achievements. One of them is the campaign achievement. So like if you do this side quest, which you can totally blow off, you get this achievement for like befriending the cook. And then later in the main campaign, if you have this achievement, then other things to your benefit happen. But also there's individual achievements we did not talk about, we didn't really use. But like there's, for example, the cat tamer. So the mouse that gets the final blow to drive the cat away becomes a scarier rodent. And any bad guys for the rest of that chapter that try to attack you throw 1 less attack die, because you're just sort of like that bad guy that killed the cat, right? There's the scrapper, which is the first mouse to get killed twice. Gets benefits coming back more often because he's just that much tougher. So little things like that make it fun. The first mouse to roll 3 cheese on 1 dice gets the cheesiest aboard. And little things that only last for that chapter make you a little buff and kind of fun things. I really like that element to the game. Mm-hmm. We also didn't talk about party items. So some items you discover are for the group. I like this mechanic also. You can share the rope or share that kind of stuff. And as Eric mentioned, the campaign rules are great too. You keep your abilities. You keep 1 card beyond your starting item, so you can keep 1 thing from chapter to chapter and feel that growing going on. So really, it's got it all, and it's a great little co-op game. Mm-hmm. I'm going to rate this game.
I sense a complicated rating coming.
Well, I don't know if hardcore gamers are going to love this. Uh-huh. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do it reverse. So basically, I'm going to say that the average gamer on a 3+ on a D6 will like this game.
Oh,
so 4 out of 6 gamers are going to like this out of the chute. +1 to your die roll, meaning a 2+ will make you like this game. If you are a fan of any of the mouse genres, Mouse Guard, Redwall, you pick it. You like mice wielding swords, this is the game for you. And then a -1 if you're a hardcore gamer that really likes crunchy games with opponents, because it's a pure co-op. So if you're not into co-op so much, obviously it's less likely, but you might still get won over by the great artwork. Uh-huh. So there's my complicated rating.
Okay. Yeah, see, there's three levels there. That's not easy.
Oh, yeah. So what do you think, Craig?
Well, I agree with a lot of the things that you've said. I do enjoy I had not connected the art style to the other Plaid Hat games till Eric mentioned it, which kind of took a little bit of the wind out of my sails from the children's book perspective. I still think it's a great art design or an art style for the children's book thing. It a little bit less cool because Eric's absolutely right. That's basically the art style for all of the Plaid Hat games so far. But I really like it here, so I'm just going to enjoy it here. So it's really neat. It feels like you're in a children's story. It's really cool. It's very family friendly from the way it's presented and the way the combat works and the way nobody dies, but you do get captured. So there are consequences, but at the same time, there's not people aren't bleeding out and all kinds of stuff like that. I like the mechanic also that the timer gives a constant state of pressure, a constant state of unease as you're trying to rush through. And timing is going to be, I think we messed up at least twice, the timing of going from one chamber to the next and things like that, which having that timer running kind of gives you that ability to sort of massage the system a little bit. Like, oh, wait, maybe we should have stayed, fought the spider, and gone up into the kitchen with an empty wheel kind of thing.
Right.
So I really like the way that allows you to kind of control, maybe not control, but ride the flow of the story a little bit more. I like the multiple levels. I like the different cards. I would have liked if we had traded some cheese. I have no idea what the achievements are. I never heard of those. But yeah, I really did. I enjoyed myself a lot. I had a really good time. not a game that I'm going to run out and buy, but then I don't have any kids right now that are at an age to play this. If I thought my nieces or nephews would enjoy a game like this, I think I might consider buying it, because I think it would be a really neat way to get kids into these kind of adventure games. The theme and the rules aren't overly complicated, but at the same time, there's a lot of depth there. So that as your child develops and grows, I think they're going to enjoy and appreciate the game more and more, which I think is a really cool element to the game also that may be even overlooked by adults that are just playing it and kind of seeing the depth of it right out of the bat. Because I think this game's depth could very well grow with your kid, which I think is really neat. So I am going to say I'm going to give it a 3+ with a reroll.
Ooh, that's a nice roll.
So slightly more than 50% of average players, average gamers will enjoy it out of the box, and I will give a +1 if I didn't even know this was a genre. If you're into mouse genre game,
I invent new terms.
If you're looking for a game that you can enjoy with your children, because I do think this is a game that grown-ups will enjoy just as much as their kids are enjoying as they're playing it all together. It's not something that I'm going to buy and play with my friends, but if my friends already have it or for some reason want to play it again, I would absolutely say yes. I had a lot of fun. I enjoyed it.
Nice. So what do you think, Eric?
This game has a tremendous amount of charm.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is definitely my pick of family game of the year. My son, I think I'm a little tainted just because I have played it primarily with my son, and he is just in love with the game. It avoids many of the problems of straight co-ops. You can't really have a leader dictating everything because you've got the die rolls and because everybody has their abilities, and some of those abilities require you to spend cheese to use them, but there's other things you can use the cheese for. You really need to play your own character, which I like. It adds to the team feel of the whole thing. It's an epic yarn. It's a wonderful adventure story. And it all comes together into this whole that just you feel like you've accomplished something when you get through a chapter. And I love the variation of these chapters. The variable board, the different objectives each time, and the final 3 chapters. I'm not going to go into plot, but that rule about only being able to keep one card, which is an excruciating rule when you go from chapter to chapter. If you've collected a bunch of cool stuff and you really like it, only being able to keep one card from chapter to chapter is terrible. Which one do I keep?
Right.
The last 3 chapters throw that rule away as you build up to the final battle. One group of mice goes over here and does this. In one chapter, one group of mice goes over here and does this in another chapter, and then they join up for the final showdown. And they get to keep all their stuff, all their cheese, and so you really feel like you're building up to a huge confrontation at the end. It's wonderful. And so for that, I can't get as complicated as you guys are getting. I'm giving this a 2. It's not for everyone.
Yeah, but most everyone.
It has a tremendously wide appeal. And for family, as long as you're okay with mice wielding swords,
right.
I think it's a terrific achievement, and I can't wait to see more from Jerry Hawthorne. You can tell that he has a particular point of view and an attitude that he put into this game, and I think it comes across tremendously well. So huge thumbs up from me. Yeah, hardcore gamers won't find enough crunchy bits here, but there is a lot of depth to this game.
Oh, I agree.
Oh, agreed.
There's a lot to explore here. So 2 for me.
Great. That's a great rating, Eric, and all great points.
Rating.
Good stuff. And I agree. I think it's great. So Eric, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us here on this episode of the D6 Generation. We really appreciate it.
Hey, you bet. I never get to talk this long about anything.
Even all those hours in the Dice Tower, I got to think that's pretty
close.
close.
Well, it's all split up. It's all short. We get one game here, one game here, one game here. I don't think I've ever talked about
one game for a whole hour.
Like yours. You should be allowed to talk nonstop.
Right. Get this man a book to record or something. Come on.
There you go.
So
Eric, I was recording all day today, too. So
Eric, if people want to find out more about what you're up to, do you have your own private blog or anything, or just head to the Dice Tower? Or?
I have a blog that hasn't been posted in for some time, but you can find my stuff at ericsummerer.com. You can also find me at dicetower.com. There's a little podcast we produce weekly out there.
Excellent show.
And if you're looking for my audiobook work, head to Audible and search for Eric Michael Summerer. There's at least 50 books up there.
Nice.
And, if you want to pay me, go to The Care and Feeding of Rubber Chickens. How to Live Like a Lord Without Really Trying. Or just, pick whatever you want, because they're all good.
Well, great. Thanks again so much, Eric, and we look forward to hearing you more on the Dice Tower.
Thanks. Thanks for stopping by.
This is the D6 Dice Demon, and when I'm not tormenting souls in Hades, I'm listening to the D6 Generation. Shouldn't you?
The D6 Generation.
Dice are our vice.
Well, summer's coming up, and of course, young gamers' thoughts turn to feelings of wanting to travel. And if you're going to travel and you're a gamer, there's really only one way to pull that off to the absolute best effect, and that's going with Geek Nation tours wherever you want to go.
Oh, yeah, laddie, you betcha.
See? Russ is in Scotland right now.
No.
And I'm over here in New York.
See, if you wanted to actually hear what a Scotsman sounds like, you wouldn't want to listen to me, because I am of no value.
Travel there with Geek Nation tours.
Exactly. Craig, what's going on in New York? Are they doing Comic-Con this year?
They are doing Comic-Con this year.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's Geek Nation's Tours Tour, they are not just doing Comic-Con. You are going to hit New York City, and you're going to see all of the cool sites from all kinds of different, not only movies, but also comic books as well. You're going to go to all kinds of different locations throughout the city. You're going to eat the food that these guys eat. You're going to see all the different visuals. You're going to go to some collectible galleries and famous comic shops. And, of course, it all culminates Friday through Sunday with NYCC.
Yeah, baby. Great con, by the way. Nicole goes every year. It is fantastic, and it's just not one you want to miss. One of the largest cons on the East Coast, definitely worth checking out. And Geek Nation Tours will make sure you see all the hotness for
and
sure.
Don't forget, they have non-geek spouse packages as well. So if you're a giant nerd, but your wife is not, or vice versa,
right?
You go on these, and they've got all kinds of stuff for your non-nerdy spouses to do as well.
Oh yeah. Now, Craig, have you seen the Scotland thing?
I've heard about it from you, laddie.
Oh, yeah. It's like just different historical site every day. Just fantastic stuff. Glasgow, have you been there, Craig?
I have.
Yes. Fantastic. And then you're going to go on and check out, then to go to the whiskey distilleries. You get to drink whiskey in Scotland.
Of course, you're in Scotland.
Does it get any better than that? I think not. Just fantastic stuff. Get to see all the battlefields. Just great, super geeky stuff. And then also, let's say you're like, you see, this is where GNT really helps me out, for example, because I would love to go to Japan. And when you go to a country that you're not really familiar with at all, it's a lot. It's very intimidating. A lot to take in, a lot to do, a lot to learn. And they have a great tour coming up in October 2014 for Japan. The Feudal Japan and Battlefields series they're going to be doing there. That looks fantastic. So again, get on over to Geek Nation Tours, click on upcoming tours, and check out New York Comic Con, Scotland, and Japan coming up in not too distant future. Get in there, get your geek on.
You get your geek on. This edition of Jera Notice is brought to you by our friend Rick from Heathridge, Perth, Western Australia, formerly of Connolly, and prior to that, Joondalup. Rick, ye of little faith. I hope I did that right. With the following shout-out. Sending a shout-out to my daughter Erin, who now plays D&D with us, and her daughter Cadence, aged 18 months, who we hope will also join us one day. And Rick was kind enough to include a photo of the beautiful Cadence and her clearly her favorite book so far, which is the Star Wars ABC book, which of course is one of my son's favorite books, or at least was until my wife found a library that actually turns out it checks out not books but bags of books, and the bags are all themed, and she found a space theme book, and so it's an entire bag of children's books that are all spaceship themed. So pretty darn cool. Do you ever notice how many people around you are helping you out at any given time? If you just like take a moment to pause and look around, and it's just kind of crazy how many good people are around you helping you out. And of course, with me, it always starts with my wife, Karen, who makes all of this stuff possible. And it doesn't include, in this one little instance, my mom, who's always saying, if you were married to me, you'd never go out gaming this much. You know, things like that don't help when your wife hears that and then looks at you and goes, you appreciate me now? But seriously, I mean, Karen bends over backwards to let me do all this stuff, and my schedule is crazy, and she does all of this extra stuff to make that happen. I mean, I go to school on Monday, and then I stay after school to write, and then I do kickboxing. And then I come home. And then on Tuesday, I go to school, and then I stay after school to write, and then I go straight to gaming, and I'm not home till 11. And then on Wednesday, I go to school, and I come home, but then she goes to work, and then I podcast, and when she gets home from work, I'm still podcasting, and then I'm like going to bed at 11. And then on Thursday, I go to school, and then she drives my son a half hour so that I can pick him up and bring him to my parents' house so they can watch him while I kickbox again. And then I take him home, and of course she's working again. So I mean, it's just craziness, and she's always doing this stuff. Today she drove all the way to my school because I forgot my kickboxing clothes. So yes, A, I'm an idiot, and B, she just really, really helps out. And it's more than that. I mean, it's all these friends that I have. It's my family is great. Russ is phenomenal. I mean, none of this would have happened without Russ. You know, I mean, he's the driving force behind all this. And every now and then I just think, like, how lucky am I? And it's pretty amazing. And all of these people and all of this positive energy. And then I get on the internet and I start to go crazy again. And right now it's all about, as you might have heard in achievements, it's all about Kickstarter, because now I'm addicted, which all of my friends knew would happen because of what happens to me when everybody gets into collectible games and I jump on eBay, and the next thing you know, I've spent like 3 months of disposable income on some stupid game that nobody's playing by the time it all gets shipped to me. So I still think that Kickstarter is not a great deal for me, but right now I can't help it. I'm so sucked in. And so lately I bounce back and forth between Dwarven Forge, and if you have not seen Dwarven Forge yet, first of all, Dwarven Forge is the coolest 3D, and they're not a sponsor. I've met the guy once. He doesn't even know who I am, but the coolest 3D dungeon terrain out there. It is brutally, prohibitively expensive until now. I mean, if you've ever gone to Gen Con, these are the guys, they have their booth is designed to look like a big Dwarven Forge. I kid you not. And so, I mean, it's this whole Forge thing, to the point where they have an audio loop of people forging swords and stuff that goes on the whole time we're at Gen Con. I mean, it's crazy. And they have laid out on these beautiful tables all of their terrain. They've got caverns, they've got different kinds of temples, they've got sci-fi stuff, they've got the dungeon stuff, crazy stuff. And I have always gone over and just drooled on their stuff. Seriously, it is awesome. My personal favorite, of course, because I like water features, is the underground water, underground cavern with lakes and rivers. And I mean, I don't know. I just don't know. Like, I don't know what I would do with it, but anyway. So right now, the Kickstarter, they're kickstarting a new line, a new product line, using new material that they're calling Dwarvenite. There's a theme there somewhere. And it is nearly indestructible. They've got an awesome YouTube video of driving over it with a pickup truck and dropping it off a water tower. And they don't have a 2-year-old chewing on it yet, but they should. Anyway, it looks awesome. The deal is ridiculous. This is, as I said in Achievements, I'm looking for My Sedition Wars. This is going to be My Sedition Wars, because even at the basic pledge level, it's less than 50% of what you would normally be paying for their awesome stuff. And I'm getting the cheaper stuff. Usually it comes pre-painted. They've never offered anything else but pre-painted. Now with the Kickstarter, you can get it pre-painted, or you can get it just this dark gray that doesn't even need to be primed before you dry brush it and everything. So obviously I'm going to go for that because I can get more stuff. And I'm like on it. I'm sitting on it. I'm loving it. And I'm in awe. And this happened to me during the Wild West Exodus stuff too, but I was way more involved and I didn't want to like judge anybody. But now I'm like not involved with Dwarven Forge at all, other than I'm like a huge fan, and I've always been a lurker fan, creepy stalker guy. And now I'm like super excited. And it's crazy because even though we're talking right now, they have nearly 3,000 backers, and still every new backer that jumps on there, one of the two owners of the company emails you a personal email, not like a form letter or an email that just automatically goes out, but literally a personal email that thanks you for supporting them and for helping them out in their new endeavor. And it's crazy. And I know it's real because I responded, because I'm that kind of idiot. I was like, oh, you guys are awesome, I've all loved your stuff. And they responded back again. Okay, so really, honestly, it's craziness. It's just unbelievable, and you should check it out. And then the other one, of course, is Sales of Glory from Ares Games. And I backed out a little bit. I didn't get the big, giant, huge package because I don't honestly think I need that many ships. And they did a weird thing with their. They structured it so that their stretch goals were little things, not like new ships. They should have not told us they had all these ships done, because the stretch goals are all things that are like, I don't really need all that stuff. And then what they did was they eventually made the level down from the get everything level, as far as stretch goals go, just as sweet as the get everything level. So you get everything except for a few of the other ships. And if this is anything like Wings of Glory, you don't need all those ships. So I did back down a little bit, but I'm still excited. Aubrey Matron's got me super excited. There was an Audible sale that includes now. So if that sounded interesting to you, go to Audible right now and check it out. But there are a lot of, in fact, most of the Aubrey Matron series right now is on sale. So you want to check that out. But what I was talking about with the negativism and the positivism was people who have this sense of entitlement, and it drives me crazy. And then there's the other side, which is like, you're not buying a product, you're just giving money as charity, and if you get something in return, you're lucky. And I'm like, the reality has got to be in the middle somewhere, It's got to be somewhere in the middle of, you need to give me everything I want, and you're not guaranteed to get anything. Now, I know you're not guaranteed to get anything, but seriously, when these bigger companies are on Kickstarter, you got an expectation that you're going to get what you're paying for. But it's just exciting, and at the same time, it's so frustrating when, especially Dwarven Forge comes out with and the way they're structuring their stretch goals, basically, you're pledging for a certain number of sets. Like, for instance, I am currently pledging 5 and trying to scrape up the money to pledge 10, and the way that they structure their stretch goals is they like one door, but it's not one door; it's one door per set. So I'll be getting 5 doors. And it's these special doors. So you get that many doors, and your sets come with doors. So I'm going to have 15 doors. And eventually I'm going to have pretty close to 20 doors or more when all is said and done. So, and that's on top of all the other cool stuff. Pillars and walls and corners and angles and all kinds of cool stuff like that. But every time they do it, there's, well, I really wanted X, Y, or Z. Well, I really wanted DQ and F. And then you've got the expert. Well, I have an MBA in business, and I'll tell you right now, they're making a big mistake doing. And it's like, seriously, what I want to say is I want to tell them, and through you, who probably aren't them, but through you, I'm going to tell them, in my head anyway, what I tell my freshmen when we start talking about writing an essay. Because on the internet, you are nobody. Okay? So you aren't entitled to anything, and nobody has any reasonable expectation that they need to listen to you. So don't just give your opinion. Tell us how you came to your opinion, maybe. I mean, if you really think that we care, which quite often we don't, or I don't anyway. But seriously, you can't just go up there and go, blah, 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 and I think you should do this. Well, nobody cares what you think. That's a lie. I'm just sort of in a negative spin right now. It's been a rough day. But anyway, still, it is frustrating because you establish yourself and then prove and support your point. That's, I guess, what I'm saying there. But it's intriguing because at the same time I'm on the Wings of War. I mean, the Sails of Glory Kickstarter going like, oh, seriously, you're giving us one of those? But I don't write that. But I am thinking that, so I'm stuck in the middle. I don't know. I am a hypocrite, I guess, is what I'm saying. But I am a well-meaning hypocrite, and I will stick with that. And I have babbled way more than I thought I had, so I'm just gonna let it go. And check out that Dwarven Forge Kickstarter if you know what's good for you. And unfortunately, the Sails of Glory has already passed. So thanks for listening, and I am sorry that I babbled on this time, but I think I had a little bit too much sugar tonight. Thanks for listening, and good night.
Achievement unlocked! You've made it to the end of another D6 Generation episode, the podcast whose humor has universally been acclaimed as not too horrible. Please let us know what you thought of the show by either emailing us at info@the d6generation.com or by posting in our official D6G episode thread at the top of the DACA discussions forum on DACA.com. If for some inexplicable reason you actually enjoyed this show, you can help others find out about it by leaving positive reviews on iTunes. See you in 2 weeks. Thanks for listening, and happy gaming.
The theme from Total Fangirl comes from the soundtrack of The Last Night on Earth, the zombie game, courtesy of Flying Frog Productions, and is a composition of Mary Beth Magalanes.
Here's a little song to tribute Game of Thrones Season 3 from rapper Dominic Omega over on YouTube. Check it out. A little light language in here, not too bad, but cover the ears of the kids.
Alright, fuck it. Real talk, down low. I needed to do this song. Yo, I'm a nerd. Big secret, but I'm a nerd, and I love these books. If you watch it on HBO and think you know what's going on, I appreciate that. The people who waited 5 years for Dance, this one's for you. Check it. Yo. On the real, your boy is a hip-hop player, but for this joint here, I play the role of King Slayer. See, toe-to-toe, blow for blow, we can fight, G. But word to Jamie, there are no other men like me. This industry is in a roughed-up state. Cats front so tough, you call the bluff, they fake. And we all know it too, we just love to pretend. Use my tongue as a sword, slice it with the pointy end. And friends can turn to enemies in an op link. My click together firm like a master's chain link. We got skills, and yes, we're so ill. Our brotherhood was born underneath the hollow hill. For real, shit so sad it's almost funny. Young niggas little fingers steady chasing after money. Dummies, I do it for the love like Stark and sit alone with my honor in a dungeon in the dark. In this Game of Thrones, it's eye for eye. There is no middle ground, you either win or die. You gotta watch the cats who watch your back. You can get hit quick, man, and that's a fact. Politics and bedfellows, what's real, who's fake? The surprise in your eyes when your man goes snake. It can happen to your fam or you all alone. We go big, we go home, we play this Game of Thrones. Lots of fake shit. Nowadays the realm is a snake pit. No gravity, you weightless, not a chance to escape it. I take shit from no man and never compromise. Tread water, hold my head, navigate the endless lies. There is hope though, sure as the dragonflies, the energy I maximize while small folk are terrorized. But never mind, see here, house classic. High above the game, at the wall, in the basket. I'm not pretending there will be no happy ending. Beats and rhymes blended to produce the red wedding. Do you get it? How these tracks can't score me? You may have the better claim, but me, I have the bigger armor. and like winter we're coming. So let's get shit clear. I give a what if you broke or a millionaire. Underground versus us, you just can't compare. We give you joints like this Marines of cast in there. Game of Thrones, it's eye for eye. There is no middle ground, you either win or die. You gotta watch the cats who watch your back. You can get hit quick, man, a massive fact. Politics and bedfellows, what's real, who's fake? The surprise in your eyes when your man goes snake. It can happen to your fam or you all alone. We go big, we go home, we play this Game of Thrones. It's a travesty, watch them turn tracks into tragedies and live life lavishly, successful with the savagery and avidly punctuate the premise with lead. The AR house stands strong, the dragon has 3 heads. Instead of spitting lies, I use my imp-like mind and never back down. I am the mountain that rhymes. I see the doubt in your eyes and feel the weakness in your person. You counting the lines until I finish it for certain. Hurting, cause you just don't know who to trust on this changing battlefield. It's not you and I adjust. Discuss the fact that we just taking you higher. This one here is a true song of ice and fire. On this microphone, I'm just doing my thing. Bulling men while alive, hip-hop's mad king. I do it for the love, I do it for the art. Hip-hop, dire wolf, peace out, omega star. In this Game of Thrones, it's eye for eye. There is no middle ground, you either win or die. You gotta watch the cats who watch your back. You can get hit quick, man, and that's a fact. Politics and bedfellows, what's real, who's fake? The surprise in your eyes when your man goes snake. It can happen to your fam or you all alone. We go